Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to a very special, maybe a not special episode.
How
of
often do we have this person here?
Sure. Well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
My name is Gianmarco Soresi. I'm the host of The Downside, and I'm here with my co-host
Russell Daniels.
Russell. Thank you. I lost.
Skip.
Today is a special episode because we're here with our producer. Our producer, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just making sure. She does so many things for me, helping me on the road. She's a social media manager, producer. Currently, are we allowed to say your current job, or are you keeping it secret?
I don't know if I'm allowed to disclose that information.
Really?
I don't know if I'm allowed to be associated with it, honestly.
Okay.
Well,
she has other work. I want you to know she's not making it all from me for sure. But she's here. Paige Asachica.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Just bring the mic a little closer, just in case, because we're loud as fuck.
Yeah.
But we're
Gotta match the energy.
You do got to match. It's get ready to ramp it up.
All right.
The reason we're doing this is we had a Patreon. So this is for two different audiences. First, this is to my all our patrons. I think it's 26 people. One of them is me, though, because I wanted to see how it looks like when things go through.
Right.
So
you can do that for free.
Okay, so too late for that. Note, producer Paige.
You didn't have Paige around when you set that up.
But we decided, and so first this is to the patrons. We could come back, but we're taking a pause because we want to focus on the main episodes. And we're going to do one extra episode a month for the main feed. And we just needed to build it up some more. I need a full infrastructure. I started going on the road, and I was like, I cannot make these extra episodes.
Yeah.
Paige can't be posting these. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
And it was like when we were doing it, we were sometimes doing 2 or 3 in a row, and you were like, "What?" Like we get to the Patreons, we're like, "We just talked about everything,"
everything.
And it felt like this is people shouldn't be paying for this. You know,
I don't know if I'd go that far. I would not go that far. No. Wait, I gotta hold it back. I think there's plenty to talk about.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of first of all, you're creating great content. I think great content in the beginning where you don't have a lot of patrons. So you're I'm going through hours of work, and then Paige is going through hours of work, and and then if you look at the views, if you really want to do that, you're 4 people.
Yeah.
Because not even the patrons all listen every time. Some of them just want to be, supportive.
They're just supportive, yeah.
They're just supportive. And I would upload a video that I spent hours figuring out, and the download didn't work, and I had to call Comcast one time, and they had to come and fix everything, and then one person watches it. And you're
It's probably
okay.
me.
Oh, and it's probably Paige.
It's probably you watching it on your own thing.
So, and then I saw what really successful Patreons do, and there's so much exclusive content. This one that I follow a lot is called Are You Garbage? And it's a podcast that's blown up in popularity. And our patron goals will add videos after 100 patrons, and we already added videos just to get it out of the way.
Yeah.
But theirs was once they hit, I think 10,000 patrons, they were going to take the co-host to Disney World for the first time.
Yeah.
They just hit a new goal where they're going to bet $10,000 on black at roulette in a casino. So they're doing well, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
If this was all I did, sure. But I'm going on the road. Russell has a wife and a dog and a cat.
I work too.
And he works too.
And
I have a full-time job, and I do Uncle Function.
No, I'm joking. And
Russell doesn't do anything.
and Paige has a mystery job, and we're working where I tour, and then I send Paige a 20-minute crowd work clip video that none of it's funny, and I say, cut this down into something that will go viral. And it's a lot. It's a big task. I say, can you please caption this video? I talk so fast, you don't know what I'm saying the entire thing.
Yeah.
And then we got to create the TikTok version where you take out the curse words, and then you got to create the. It's
a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
But hey, Crisis Actors Video is doing really well on Twitter right now. I don't know if you saw.
No,
Patton
I didn't see
Oswalt liked it.
Amazing.
And
Congrats.
he just released an apology for liking it because it's a risky one. So for those of you listening on the regular feed, that's what you're getting now. We're going to be doing our regular one a week, and then one bonus one. And to our Patreon members, we're going to keep the Patreon up If you join, you can pay the one-time fee just so you have access to all the back episodes. But otherwise, if you're a patron, you can leave if you want to. If you don't want to, you're not going to be billed anymore until we come back.
Yes.
Once Paige has a page.
Yes.
Hopefully. Or Paige is going to quit right after this is done. It's very scary.
She's gonna do this interview and then like leave, quit.
I want you to know I have a gift coming for you.
Okay.
Well, I thought of it like a good gift, like an interesting gift.
Okay.
And then the availability of that gift is not. It wasn't there yet. So I was waiting, and then I got to this point where I'm like, oh, I should get the lamer gift, which is probably still a good gift, but it's a step above just throwing money at you. It's so just so you know, I'm not just forgetting about it.
Okay.
So
Are you going to
appreciate
tell her
it.
what it is? Or are you going to tell?
no, there's nothing worse than my dad
it's coming
used to
like an IOU. Okay.
yeah.
I
Well,
see.
I'm waiting for it to be like released. My dad for Christmases sometimes he would like. If the gift he didn't get in time, he'd give you the piece of paper like wrapped up, and you'd open it and it'd be like a picture, like just a small picture of what the gift was on a white piece of paper.
Yeah.
I remember once he gave a picture with a picture of Italy on it, and he's like, "I'm going to pay for an Italy trip for you," and of course, it never materialized.
Oh no.
So, but
was he
I know
gonna
you
send
brought
you to
gifts
Italy
for me and
alone?
Russell. Can we get the gifts now on air?
I think we should do it at the end.
At the end, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
because it's going to say, "I quit."
Yeah.
Fuck you, and I quit. So welcome to the first bonus episode per month for the regular feed. Again, if you want to go to the Patreon, we got a lot of great old episodes, despite what Russell said at the beginning. I should have vetted you before we did this. Dear God.
No, I felt like there's maybe only one time where, and it was not even you, because you always do lots of planning. I was feeling self-conscious about one, maybe two episodes where I didn't do I was like, I just didn't feel great about it. Sorry.
Great.
Take it back.
Paige, you want to say something negative so I can go into this music?
I came prepared, and Gianmarco did not with the gift situations, so...
This is the downside.
1, 2, 3. Downside.
You're listening to The Downside
The Downside.
with Gianmarco Soresi.
So you're going to interview us today.
Yes.
And this will be a good primer for like new downside people. So just so people know, the downside, this is a podcast where negativity is celebrated, kvetching is encouraged, and silver linings are debunked. But it's fun. Every time I describe the podcast, Russell gives me a look like, I don't think that's a good idea for a podcast.
But it could have been worse, because I was here before this podcast even was a thing.
Way back.
And the first idea of it, or one of the first ideas, was having like a book club.
The book club, comedy book club. Every guest tells me their favorite book, and I read it in advance of the episode. I have not read a book in a year and a half from front to back. I'm stuck on a book right now. I don't know if I've ever talked about it, where I'm stuck on a book about communism that I got.
I know. Yeah.
my
you
God.
said-
And I'm too. It's one of these books I'm not smart enough to read it. I read chapters. I don't know what happened, so I go very slowly. And it's one of those things I can't seem to let go, that I have to finish this book.
Yeah.
But real quick, before you go into your interview, I just want to say how we met, because it was very. You reached out to me on Instagram.
Yes.
And you said you were like interested in like maybe doing some social media type work for free. That's and normally if someone's offering something for free, something's weird, something's up.
Yeah.
But we met for a coffee at that in LA.
At Earth.
At
was
Earth, very-
the last day of when like the restaurants were shutting down for COVID again. And
Yes.
that was it.
And it was good, and I was like, sure, and then we were doing all sorts of work. This was pre-podcast, and then we just kept going and ramped it up, and now it's a full package.
Yeah.
And a lot of comedians ask me, they say, please, who's your person? And I always say I'll pass along their email, but I know you're busy.
Yeah.
But I also I never want to be the one where I'm like no, she's my person. But I'm like, I'll pass along the email, but she won't get back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I probably won't respond at this point.
Listen, they're all going to start asking. we got this new. I never mind talking about this stuff on the podcast, but there's some new for people making reels on Facebook where they're. I told you they're monetizing it, so we're just posting old TikToks. We're just posting old TikToks on the Facebook Reels, and this is really obnoxious. I'm gonna be gross. I don't give a fuck. How many days
much
ago?
have you made?
How many days ago did we enter this program?
Like 3 or 4?
I think it was 4. 4 days ago, and Paige found it, by the way. Paige was the one who saw this bonus was being offered. Again, didn't make any new content for this. We just posted old TikToks that already existed. We have now made $3,900 in those 4
days.
4 or 5 days.
Wait.
And I got a lot more videos, and we have a month to make. They cap it at $35,000, and I'm going to try to get as close. I don't know if we can.
How does this work? I'm confused because I'm like, who is watching that? It's a lot of money. If they're going to give you, Gianmarco Soresi, $35,000 in the next month for old content, I'm confused as how many people are they doing that for?
That's
a lot of money.
I talked with someone who has a big following on Facebook, and apparently this is more for micro influencers.
But it is invite only.
It is invite only. Some people I don't have it. I keep telling them about it. They're like, how? And then I get to be like, I don't know. And
so did you get an email about this to
it was on Facebook. It said, like, do you want to opt into the Reels rewards program?
Yeah, there was a notification that I saw, and then I flagged it to Gianmarco, and
that's
history.
I mean, and it's just like, I think Facebook is just like, they have a new program. They have more money than God, and they go, we want to see if this program sticks. Throw $1 billion at it.
Yeah.
I mean, there must be insane money. If I'm being offered the potential, I'm not saying I'm going to make it, but the potential to make $35,000 in a month.
Yeah.
And we don't know if it's going to go away after this month is done.
Yeah.
Because that's what happened with Instagram, where there was a much smaller cap, $800.
Yeah.
For a month. And then it went away after 2 months.
Okay.
And also it was like the views to dollar ratio was much more harder to get that $800.
Yeah.
But like, someone told me, and I don't want to bank on it. You can't bank on any of this shit. But that they said that this was like a year-long program. If this goes on for a year, now listen, I don't have that many jokes. At a certain point, there's only so many one-liners I have that are good for this type of medium.
Yeah.
But if there's a potential to make $35,000 every fucking month, I'm gonna have to. And then the question is, do you sell out? Do I scrap every other plan I have artistically and go screenplay? I can't put a screenplay on Facebook Reels.
Are you writing a screenplay currently?
Listen, I went to go write it.
You're thinking about writing
I downloaded
a screenplay?
Final Draft again for my new laptop. It had been so long that I've written a sketch that I went to write a sketch for Uncle Function on my laptop, which was new 7 months ago. Yeah. And I didn't have Final Draft. I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's how long it's been since I've written anything other than
I know.
a joke. So it was an amazing thing. Paige, you are essential. You've been the blessing at least 2 or 3 times on the podcast.
I appreciate that.
Of course. Well, I hope that made up for the lack of pay. So let's interview away. We were calling this Inside the Unemployed Actors Studio.
Yeah.
Because do you still feel you're an actor or a comedian? If you were to use a title.
Ooh. I actually, both of those terms feel limiting to me, or feel strong. Like I don't feel.
Well, you're gonna be like, I'm a human being.
No. I just feel like
I'm an artist.
I probably actor more so than comedian, but I think.
But you're very comedic.
I mean, it's all acting I'm doing right now. So yeah, but I comedian feels like it puts in a thing of like stand up. Does that make sense?
Sure, I get that.
I don't know. So I don't feel strongly, but a blurred line.
So you're a husband.
I'm
and a pet owner. I'm a comedian.
Yeah.
And take it away, Paige. You take it from here.
Okay, well, let's start at the beginning. So I've been working with Gianmarco for a little over a year now, and have been helping out, like you mentioned, with social media stuff and obviously producing this podcast. So it's been a wild journey since then. But previously, just so people know, I worked with other comedians, including
bigger comedians, yeah.
And I was their social media manager, content producer for 2 years. And then once I stopped working in that social media agency, then I was like, I still want to do this on the side. And then I came across your TikTok, which then I reached out to you, and then it's been history since then.
Do you still keep in contact with Roseanne Barr?
Jesus Christ.
Wouldn't it be funny if she was Roseanne Barr's social
That would be
media manager?
amazing. She's like,
Lucky guess.
she was the one that tweeted out that fateful tweet. She's like, Roseanne, are you
That's
sure
why I
about
left.
this? Well, you had talked about, we don't have to name names, but like with comedians, it's a tough thing because sometimes they make decisions that you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't say I've been 100% like behind each comedian that I've worked with, but those are the ones that I don't talk to anymore.
Oh, okay.
So,
But you worked
like,
with Ted Alexandro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, I remember that.
Ted.
Love Ted.
Ted loves you. So yes, that's what you did.
Right. So then I come to find out that I actually saw you in a video when I was doing research for a potential client. And I didn't find this out until after we started working together, but it was for Eliza and
Oh, Eliza Schlesinger.
yeah. And then
Oh, yeah.
but I didn't realize that it was you in that random.
Yeah. So this was a Vanity Fair thing. This was like really early on in the pandemic. I mean, just like the worst part of it.
Yeah.
And Vanity Fair did a thing where they would give us 20 seconds with Eliza Schlesinger to try to make her laugh. And like I tried to cram my dad kiss joke, which I've been telling for the last 35 years.
Yeah.
And it made her laugh. It did well.
Yeah.
But it was
But you had to go first, and I feel like that was unfair because you didn't know the time was starting.
Oh yeah, so they brought you. You're in a Zoom waiting room, and this is still where Zoom is like everyone's figuring out all this
They're
shit
new.
really
They're
early.
new.
And they wanted to make a secret. This is so funny. They had her camera covered, and then she was gonna open it, and you'd be like, oh, "It's Eliza Schlesinger." Move on. But when they brought you in the room, her box, there's no camera, but underneath it said Eliza Schlesinger. So I was like,
Oh,
okay,
really?
And
Early
I
days of
will say,
Zoom.
Eliza was great, but I was like, I wanted it to be John Mulaney so fucking bad. And I did that joke really fast, and she laughed, and
Nailed it.
thankfully,
Yeah.
because she did not like everybody.
Yeah.
And also, it's like I shouldn't have done it. I've been doing comedy that it was more for like newer people.
Yeah.
But in my experience, if you want to win, you sometimes gotta, like with TikTok, you gotta
Yeah.
go to the preschool and be famous there first,
Yeah, yeah.
and then move on.
It was like an open mic on Zoom, which is kind of
Yeah.
like honestly not a great concept.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's start at the beginning. So, Gianmarco, you grew up in Maryland. How do you say the name?
Potomac.
Potomac. I looked it up. It's quoted as the Beverly Hills of Montgomery County. Is that true?
Yes, I know it's the 29th richest zip code in America.
Wow.
Wow.
There's a lot of like politicians there, a lot of government people, like Patrick Ewing, who was a big basketball star on the New York Knicks. He was there.
We know who Ewing is. Okay.
I don't.
Paige has no idea. who
I was
Patrick
just trying to.
and he drove the same car as my dad. I remember that, but he had tinted windows.
Oh, okay.
And so very boring. I mean, you know me, I milk every bit of my existence for material, and I have not once ever thought of a joke about Potomac. I found it just like very dull. It was like there was Jews there, but it wasn't like Jewish. There was a lot of people with a lot of money, but that kind of meant that you didn't have neighbors you associated with because your house and your backyard was so fucking big. You'd have to travel. You'd have to take a train to visit your neighbor. So very boring. Very.
So wait, you didn't have any like childhood, like neighborhood friends?
No, I didn't have many regular friends in the neighborhood. No, not really. I was just a loner of a kid.
But you didn't like play on the street or anything? Like
No, because it was you're around some rich people who don't have kids, or I just don't think. Looking back, my parents were not very social.
Yeah.
Like my dad really did not have. He had like one friend, and it was his old college buddy, and he'd see him once every 3 years.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's like part of like becoming an adult was like being like, oh, I can't be like that because
Yeah.
it's
That's
horrible.
so isolating.
Horribly isolating. But that's why he's so lonely, and then he dates these women that are younger, and I'm like, you need a guy. You need a man your age who you can talk about not being able to get an erection anymore. Like you can't bring this up with her.
Yeah.
You need dudes. If you're a dude, you just need that.
Or I need therapy.
Or therapy. But he's had a therapist. That's why I was always so skeptical about therapy, because my parents were always in therapy, and I was like, well, this shit doesn't work.
Yeah.
And my grandpa, who passed away, he always told me, he said, well, you don't know what your dad would have been like without the therapy. And I was like, okay.
That's true. That's
Okay.
true.
Okay.
Fair. Did you say burn?
No, I said
Oh, I thought you said like burn.
Burned.
Burned. Your dad's
Burned by
Your
grandpa.
dad's. My son sucks.
So yeah, my father had a big backyard. We had 7 acres wasted on me.
Wow.
Did you play around? Did you imagine on that backyard?
I did, but not with friends. Again, like we had like a little bamboo field, and my dad, he would do this. This is when
You had a bamboo field?
there was like bamboo. I don't know why there's bamboo, but I would make these bamboo poles and like use like I pretend like I was a warrior, and I
Yeah, of
that's what I
course.
would do with the trees. I would like hit the trees with the bamboo.
Yeah.
And I had throwing knives, and I was into that kind of stuff. But it was always very solo.
Yeah.
Sometimes my friends and I would come over. I camped, but in the backyard.
Yeah.
And my dad would bring a TV out to the tent and like long extension cords. So took all the camp out of the camp experience.
Yeah.
But we had deer, some fox. My dad built a tree house I used twice. And then paintball guns. I did that a lot as a kid.
Wow.
So
And
wasted.
then, so Russell, you grew up in Bainbridge, which is
Yes.
upstate New York.
Yes.
And I looked up things to do in Bainbridge, and
my
All
God.
that came up was leave.
Oh, God.
and I came across Frog Pond Farms,
Yes.
which
I went to the frog pond all the time.
there's like a bunch of cute.
I can't believe you're saying frog pond to me right now.
did my research.
Bainbridge has gotten more shout outs on this podcast than sorry, go ahead.
Oh well, I was just gonna say they look like they have a bunch of cute farm animals there.
They do. And that's what we'd go for. My mom would go and buy like my mom does a lot of gardening. And so she would go and buy like plants and things. But then we would go because there's a lot of farm animals and you'd pet them and talk to them and whatnot.
What was the most exotic animal?
No, it's truly like cows, and it's like very regular farm animals. You
There's
know,
like a
goats,
llama.
chickens. Oh, they may have a llama now. Okay, they
don't
did
know.
not have a llama. Oh,
Maybe.
you probably know more about Frog Pond than I do
It's
now.
like I was there yesterday.
It has
and
been over 20 years since I've been to the Frog Pond.
Oh my god!
But,
Wow, we should go back.
Yeah, I should go back. I mean, it still exists, and that's more you can say than a lot of the businesses there. So it seems to be doing okay. But yeah, I went to the Frog Pond all the time. Is that what was that number one
That
on
was
the list?
number one. Do you want to know what number two was?
Was it Dunkin' Donuts?
No,
Oh God, what was it?
it was ChiChi the clown. Are you familiar with ChiChi
I
the
am
clown?
not. What was the description of ChiChi the clown?
It says, I'm a children's entertainment clown with 5 different characters and Mr. D that can come and entertain at your next family-friendly event.
Oh my God.
History.
this is a paid ad. They paid the website for
no,
ChiChi.
no,
Pay.
no, no.
ChiChi.
This was not a Yelp ad. This was like on the search results
Yeah.
number 2.
Amazing.
And it says established in 2002. I've been clowning around most of my life. Got serious with it in 2002.
Wow. How many was there? Just 2 things on that list?
I don't know. I lost interest after ChiChi.
Wow. No, I don't know who
That's
ChiChi
amazing
is.
that a not even a clown company, one
Just
individual
one
for
clown.
hire
One,
clown
yeah, no,
is
no.
the best thing to do while you're there.
I mean, there's like 2 or 3 restaurants, and
They look like bar and grill type places.
yeah. There was the Highway 7, which was around for a long time, and that my mom and dad they would go there like 3 times a week, I think.
I think that was number 3.
And that's gone now. Or it's a new. They got new management. My parents were like, "We're out." They're like,
not
did
going
not
there
like the new management. So, yeah, there's a couple bars and a bowling alley, and then a Dunkin' Donuts. The Dunkin' Donuts, when that came, that was a big deal in Bainbridge, New York, because we didn't have any chains, and it was like suddenly
see.
there was a Dunkin' Donuts, and it was like,
Do you think you're like one of the most famous people to ever live in Bainbridge?
no. There's
Like,
probably someone.
is your picture up at all the things? Like, you're
No,
the
because I
celebrity?
didn't even go. No, because also I didn't even go to school there. So I only lived there.
Sure.
I went to school 20 minutes away. So I don't have like much of a connection to Bainbridge, other than that's where my parents live, and I grew up there. But no.
If you got $10 million, would you move your parents out? Take them somewhere? Do they want to
No,
leave?
they like it there. They like it there, and they like their house, and they're close to my brother and sister-in-law and stuff. So I think no. I mean, obviously I've had, I think, more than 10 million, because I feel like 10 million is not that much. So I feel I feel like, yeah, if I
I just
Right.
checked the Facebook number. It actually just hit.
if I had and lots of money, yeah, I'd like to do something nice for them. But I don't know if that's what they would, they would want.
Yeah.
I think they like that area. So.
Cool. Okay, wait. So, Gianmarco, I need to ask you about your skater boy phase. You've posted a photo before where you're like in skater boy clothes, and I need to know more about it. Like, were you actually like a skateboarder, or is it just like the clothes, or?
Oh, definitely just the clothes. I've always had terrible balance. Like I can't even ride a bike. Like I learned one summer, but I would be terrified.
Were
to get
you
on
at least like
again.
a finger skateboarder though?
I was a finger skateboarder. So,
Okay.
well, you don't understand. You're younger than us. There was a like skater. There was
No,
a
I
skater.
understand. Yeah.
Avril Lavigne.
He was
Yeah.
a skater boy.
Okay,
She
wait,
said,
but-
"See you later, boy." Right? That's how it goes.
Yeah,
He
but
wasn't good
somehow
enough
you
for
made it like
her.
more grammatically correct. So you're like, and then she said this. So I think what happened, if I recall correctly, is there was the Avril Lavigne phase, and there was a mix of like skater boy and goth. I kind of went through at the same time, but it was very much driven by like what I thought, what women I was attracted to, and so like I was really into like skater, like punky. Especially I went to a private middle school that used to be a Christian school, but it wasn't. So anyone who wore a tie with over a t-shirt, I was like, she's the coolest girl in the world.
Wait, was it like a uniform kind of school?
Not
or-
uniform, but certain people would have liked it to be.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a little bit looser than that. Like we had chapel in the morning and there was a cross there, but they wouldn't bring up Jesus. But the cross was there.
wait.
It was like a good school, but I remember for the assembly, there was a teacher named Jay Breyer, and he was a young teacher. Looking back, he was like a young teacher, and he did an assembly where he talked about being a wrestling fan, and he talked about how no one he knew liked wrestling, but then he went to a wrestling match, and everyone there liked wrestling, and how cool it was to be with a community. And it was very clear in retrospect that it was also about him being gay. And like some of the so it's the kind of school where like you could do that, but some of the parents were upset about it.
Right, but they weren't going to get you fired for saying that.
Yeah, he wasn't fired for it for sure, but he. I remember early on, I was like dancing or singing or something before math class. This is 7th grade. I'll never forget. He said, "Gianmarco, don't take this the wrong way, but that's the gayest thing I've ever seen in my entire life." So it was like early.
Wow.
And that was a whole other phase where I would like. Where like I was like very much into like kind of jokingly to guys be like, "I'll see you later, Chris," and like really like over like an offensive gay stereotype,
Yeah.
but like I don't know what it was. Like looking back, I don't know
Yeah.
what it was I was trying to achieve. Whether I was just trying to own it or like I liked it was funny. People laughed. It made people uncomfortable. It was just that kind of thing. Skater boy. I went to a summer camp, and there was some girl I had a crush on. Like summer camps were very much the like romantic times for me, 7th grade, 8th
Right.
grade. And there was some girl I liked who looking back was like way out of my league. And then I was on like, there was a boat night. We went on like a cruise, but it's just for the night
Right.
with the camp. And there were this group of goth people, and there was a girl named Mallory. And some guy was like, "You and Mallory," and I'd never met Mallory, and he was like, "You and Mallory should make out." And she was like, "Okay." And I was like, "What?
Wow.
What?
Wow.
What are you?" And so from there on, I was like, I'm goth now. And I got jellies and chopped at Hot Topic. And it was just because
And you were
this
goth
girl, Mallory.
without any of the culture of being goth.
Yeah,
Like,
they were.
music.
I wasn't even depressed yet in the same
Yeah.
way that like I am now. Like I was still
yeah.
like they were doing the big thing with the goth kids at least then was salt and ice.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you put ice then salt, you create a scar in your skin.
Yes.
And they were super into that. And I was still like I would never scar my body like that.
Yeah.
Were they like cutting or like that was? In
I
lieu
mean,
of
people would
cutting?
consider that in the realm of cutting, but it didn't seem quite like that. They liked how it looked.
Okay.
They would make little designs. You couldn't
Yeah.
get too fancy with it.
Yeah.
But it was basically because of that girl, Mallory. This was actually the summer after 8th grade. I went into high school, new high school, first day, going by G. I went by G. I wore first day. I wish I could find the picture. I had a goatee, orange highlights, huge jeans with chains.
Man,
with
oh, man.
chains and paint on them. And I started the new high school just like right out the gate.
Oh my God. I
Weirdest
would
fucking kid in
Love to
Man.
see that.
the grade.
Oh
Yeah.
man, there's just the teacher seeing you come in and being like, "This guy, look
This guy.
He's making It is that's a really interesting thing. I would imagine if you were a teacher to see like kids be like deciding, like just being like, I'm playing this role right now. Like I'm trying to figure out who I'm going to be. So it's like trying out different roles. And you're like, sometimes it's so unnatural. Like there's some kids where you're like, oh, that they are like, okay, I can see why they're goth. And there's other kids where you're like, oh, you're just trying it on.
Well, you gotta try it on. I wonder if we like sometimes in life. I was just in North Carolina at this gig, and just for shits and giggles, there was some Eastern Asian a cappella conference, and I was like, let's just go watch this. And it was on the college campus, and you're seeing these college kids, and you as I'm 33 now, you're like, these are children.
Yeah,
these are children.
They are children. Yeah.
But I do wonder, like, as you get older, when you're younger, you have so many new high school, new college, where you get to reinvent yourself.
Yes.
And then you get older, and like, especially if you get married, you have this one person who knows you. You can't come home one day and be like, hey, honey, I think I'm going to be this now. And they'll be like, oh, that's so. Once you hit a certain age, you don't get to reinvent yourself again. And it's kind of sad.
Well, and people can, but sometimes people get a lot of shit for it, or like you get a lot of eye rolls. You know what I mean? Like, because even think about like some of the people that are like all of a sudden really into fitness or something, or and you're like, okay, like this is your whole personality now. It's that kind of thing though. As adults, we're like, okay, cool. And we kind of roll our eyes at like sometimes when people do that. But it's hard. It's hard to do. Yeah. At every stage, but you get more opportunities when you're younger.
Right. And Russell, did you have any like childhood flop eras?
I you know what? I'm gonna be honest. I feel like very close to how I dress now is like, there was a thing for a long time where you're like,
you were always this stylish?
I've had like the same shirts, the same things for so long. I think I was talking to someone about this recently. In my perfect world, I think I'm about 5 years from this. In my perfect world, I have a uniform that I wear every day because I don't like clothes. I don't want to be naked, but I don't like the experience of picking things out to wear. There's nothing like, I don't feel like I get anything. I think I would wear, one time I was doing a play and my costume was black sweatpants, like slip-on shoes, and like kind of like a not a muumuu, but like a longer, like, you know, like Shakespearean, like not a dress, but not a muumuu. But I was like, this is what
you're basically like. It's for a man. It's for a man.
It would be like if you were watching someone like on a movie or TV show and they were going to like a yoga guru. It would be like kind of like that.
I know what you mean.
But it was all black, and I was like, it was so comfortable. It felt like pajamas. It felt like a nightgown and sweatpants and really comfortable shoes. And I was like, this could be what I would want to wear every day.
And do you ever feel, because I feel this struggle with clothes, where it's one of these things, like many aspects of my life, where I was like, I'm not going to learn this. I refuse. And obviously for like my job, it's kind of like, well, you're going to go on camera and you should like know what you're going to put on and like maybe learn some of these things, especially having a girlfriend who has like some thoughts. Do you ever feel, I feel an insecurity when I see Douglas, who wrote all the music. He's an amazing dresser. Chris is a very good dresser. And sometimes I feel like a very immature, like kind of a child, a man-child. I can't go into a store and pick what goes together. These days, I match my shirt to my shoes, and that feels like, that's like, to me, I'm like, that's all I know how to do at this point. But do you ever feel insecure?
No, I think I can recognize when they look like stylish. But it doesn't really at all register as like I've done it now where I have 4 black t-shirts that I wear a lot. Yeah. And I think that might be my next thing, is I just wear black t-shirts and jeans for the majority of time. Cause I'm like, that's something I like, I feel comfortable in, and I don't think about it a lot, but I don't feel, no, I just don't connect to it.
And did you like this before Louis C.K. or like after?
No. I feel like I just always never really think, and anytime I'm like stressing about it or like, ooh, maybe this will be nice, I'm like, this doesn't look nice. They all look like, I don't know. So I don't feel like I think too much about it, or I think once in a while though, if I'm like, there'll be a fun shirt that I'm like, ooh, I like that. That's fun. But it's like, it's like so bright and fun that you're like, I don't have the personality to carry it off like every day.
I think you do.
But
I
do you
think
know
you're
what I
selling
mean?
yourself short.
So I don't know. I'll be honest. I feel like for bigger guys, sometimes there's just like not as many options, and I don't like going to like. Sometimes I order stuff online, but sometimes it's just like even the stuff in the stores, like you're like, oh, like I don't know. It's just kind of I don't know.
Yeah. Does Nicole ever like go like, Russell, take off that black shirt?
No,
Put on a. She's
no.
cool.
She'll get me like a fun shirt once in a while, though. You know.
I want to see these fun shirts because you keep saying them, and I'm like, it's like a mild orange.
We need a wardrobe
There's one
reveal.
stripe on it. Well, now, especially since we film stuff, I think all the time I'm like, fuck, it's this same shirt again.
I know.
I
do
gotta
too.
mix it
I
up.
do too.
You just got to get some good staples.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's
This is my like Cosby
when I wear
shirt.
the tank tops, I do get a couple like chest hair, and I'm like, all right, I'll do tank tops every time.
Yeah.
I got a new tank top. It's in the wash, but yes.
it is the end of January and you're wearing a tank top.
I listen. Whatever gets the clicks.
Clickbait. Okay, so how'd you guys get into acting? I mean, it seems like you guys started at a pretty young age. Is that right?
Yeah, I was always kind of when I was a little kid, whether I was at my mom's or my dad's, and this is like when my mom was still like she was like more when I was younger. I don't want to be cruel, but she was like a young mom, and I think she just got a little bit less playful when I got older. She had more kids, but when I was like young, we used to put on at both houses. We'd put on like disco, and like I remember It's Raining Men very prominently, and we would dance in the living room, just like dancing around. And I had the impulse at that age, at 4 or 5, where I said to my dad and said to my mom, we have to get our living room on a stage so people can see this.
Oh my god.
So there was like there's some deep desire to be witnessed
Right.
that I've had forever. And
So-
I think that led me through every phase of being an artist.
Right. So like stage fright was never a concern for you?
I still get anxious for sure, but that was just the desire. I'm sure I would have gotten stressed. But like I really think like especially with that, it's like without even earning it, without even having anything to show people.
Yeah.
I thought this is special. There was something about like I felt such joy doing this with my parents that I thought, oh, it would be incredible to witness this.
Yeah.
Right.
And I wish I had started my career then. I'd be a lot further now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have
Child
such
actor Gianmarco
I have such
Soresi.
envy for child actors, even though you see how so many of them go to
I
shit.
don't-
You see so many of them go to shit, but like I would have loved it. I would have loved
What
it.
are the roles you're talking about? Like you would have loved being like a Disney or Nickelodeon like child star?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Whoever that Nickelodeon pedophile guy is, you've heard those conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He could have.
I don't know if it's is it, oh
He
my
could take it
God,
had with me
Gianmarco.
for whatever he wants.
Gianmarco, no.
It's about me. I'm allowed to say. I'm allowed to say of my own body whatever I want. And I would have let him jerk. I would have jerked him off with my feet.
You were jerking him off now? I thought.
Whatever he wants.
Okay. Similar.
You would let him jerk.
No. Same thing. Earliest memories were that kind of thing, making my brother be in stuff and putting on little things and
Like at dinner?
writing, like write little plays. When we had a camcorder, I would make little movies and like.
Do you have any?
I don't. They got because they were also like the kind that you have to like put into a converter, then put in.
I remember those converters.
and I think we just threw it all out at one
Oh
point.
my god.
But it was like it was. I remember in like second grade we had to go to an assembly, and they were like gonna do like the Nutcracker or something at the assembly, and everyone was like over the moon because this girl Danielle in our class was gonna be in it, and I was so jealous. Because I was like, I remember feeling like in my core, I was like, I know I got this stuff better than Danielle. Like, I was like, I know she's not a performer. She's so boring. I remember feeling like steaming, like being like, and I don't know. There was just something always from being a little kid that I was like, have to do it.
And well, like I wrote this like on every college essay. It was like my story for a while where It was Princess and the Pea. I think it was kindergarten. And at the end, I was the prince. And I had to say at the end, like, I love you or something to the princess. And then I did it. And then I turned to the audience. And all the guys were going at the time. And I did that to the audience. I went, and the laugh, at least I remember it being quite big. I just remember getting like such a big laugh.
So you ruined the end of the play.
I ruined the end, yeah.
Yeah. For a laugh.
For a laugh.
That was more
and
important
that was
than the story was less important, and it was more important that you get the laugh.
I think what's so gross, especially if you look at the college essay, it was like, and I learned since then that even if you get a big laugh, you got to do it. You got to not do that to like be part of the team. Like the college, I turned it into the lesson. And now, and the real thing, if I had been honest in any of those fucking things, I mean, anyone reading those college essays, like, how can you trust a single word these kids say? It's so obviously they're writing it to get in.
Yeah.
But I should have said, and that's what I learned. Sometimes you're better than the thing you're a part of, and you got to take all the glory for yourself.
Yeah, they would have liked that too.
Well, I didn't get in either way, so who gives a fuck?
Oh man. Okay, wait. So that was your first acting gig in kindergarten?
Yeah, I think before that I played the donkey in Stone Soup. There was something called Stone Soup, and then Sleepy and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Wow.
And I remember that because that was with my kindergarten teacher, Miss Vance, who my dad dated briefly until my mom got her fired from the school.
Crazy.
Jesus.
And I liked her a lot.
I also did some research, and I saw that you were Seymour in Little Shop of Horrors.
Seymour, that was in high school, junior year of high school. High school was the time where I was like of my grade, like the lead theater guy.
Yeah.
And if I had known that would have been the peak of my career, I would have really enjoyed it a lot more. But Seymour was like, that was a blast. It was before I like was taking real voice lessons. So like I was just young enough that I could just scream and belt and my voice would be okay the next day. And I loved it so much. I loved that role. It was just so
fun.
great. And it makes me so mad when like Jake Gyllenhaal does it on Broadway recently, and you're like,
No,
you are
I
a
agree.
good-looking man, you piece of shit.
I agree. I do not like
Him
that.
doing that,
I do
Hugh
not like
Jackman
that.
doing the Music Man. It's like the Music Man is about he woos this librarian. Like he's so charming.
Yeah,
He's a
yeah.
snake oil salesman. Oh, why did the librarian fall in love with Hugh Jackman? Because he's the hottest guy around. Because he's fucking huge.
Yeah,
Fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
I there's nothing.
I don't like it either.
Super hot people like playing less like nerdy people. Fuck.
Put them in like
off.
the Prince and Into the Woods. Like, they have plenty of roles they can do.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I agree.
And then you did some Shakespeare stuff.
I did Shakespeare after college. I went to like an MFA program, so it was all classical theater, and then so I did a bunch of Shakespeare for like like till recently. But like I worked for the American Shakespeare Center for a while. Like,
Amazing.
did a bunch of Shakespeare, which was I liked doing it. I liked doing that. I would get frustrated sometimes in rehearsals. I think I've realized when I went to music school, I didn't like the people in music school. I was like, oh, like I just felt like it was not my vibe. I was closer to my vibe when I was in grad school for acting. I was like, okay, I'm around people acting. People like doing acting. And then I realized like once I started doing Uncle Function stuff, I realized I really like being around comedians or on a tight schedule of like, we have to do this fast, because then I'd be like rehearsing a Shakespeare show for like 4 weeks and it would be so slow. Like the process was so slow that I was like, and there was so much talking about doing stuff rather than just doing it. And that I felt like so I like a mix of things, but I like doing Shakespeare.
Especially, but I think Shakespeare would be tough. Like I don't know how you operate around it now, but I look back at like when I was an actor in musical theater, and there's so much sincerity, and there's so much like, oh, this beautiful. I remember some Shakespeare open workshop thing that was free. You could do every week in the city when I first moved to New York. And these actors would talk about Shakespeare with such reverence. They could cry about it and be like, oh, this passage from The Winter's Tale. And like, I was still able to participate a degree, but I always had a little bit of that edge of just like, okay, well, this is just
Exactly.
And now that I'm like a full-blown comedian, if I was ever back in those spaces, I would make so many jokes and be so unable to like take it seriously that they would hate me, or I just wouldn't be able to fit in. I wouldn't be able to talk sincerely about about the beauty of Shakespeare
Yeah.
for longer than 10 seconds at a time.
I one time I was in the last Shakespeare things I did, which was a few years ago at this point. I was we were doing like one of those text days where we're like standing around talking about stuff for a long time, and the guy who's playing King Lear was that worst version of an actor where you're like he just loved to to talk about it, and then he was fine on stage, but not like the way he would talk about it. You're like, it doesn't match up how much you talk about it compared to what I'm seeing. And he, at one point, in all sincerity, we weren't supposed to laugh, was like, I can only hear in iambic pentameter. And I was like, fuck off. What are you even talking about? It was just, it made me so mad. He was just like one of those people that it was just gross, where you're like, you're not even, I don't like it when people really, really successful talk that way, but to be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Great. You're better than everyone. Great.
Did you read that piece about Jeremy Strong?
Yes, I did.
And does that make you go crazy, or can you go like, okay, he's just an intense actor, I could like handle?
I think it would be hard. I think it seemingly like depend on working with someone. I'm able to enjoy the work for sure, because I don't have to deal with any of that. So I feel like I can see how you would be like, okay, that's his thing. And
I believe in some of that stuff, and I haven't had to do an intense acting thing in a long time, a very long time. It scares me, Fred. Like it scares, like if the opportunity ever comes along, like I don't know if I have it in me anymore. But like if I had to do something intense, I would have to I don't know, I'd have to start meditating again, or I just have to approach my day differently, because I just live in a kind of more fast-paced, jokey, distracted, all over the place. And if I had to do something intense emotionally for HBO, I'd have to like sit down, listen to different kind of music. I'd have to reprogram myself.
See,
to a
I feel
degree.
like it would be harder to do it like for like a theatrical thing that you have to repeat so often. That feels like
that's what I do. I don't want to act
an
anymore.
Exercise and like the thing of like, I felt like, I think I said this to you before, Gianmarco, but like when I did Iago, and I was having to do, and I did it for like a month, and it was like not a crazy, it was a very short run, but it was like, that was the thing of like going, like you did feel icky, and like you felt like at the end of every night you'd be like, I can't imagine having to do this. It's draining, A of all, but B of all, it's like such a grody place to like go and like, keep. And so like to have like a long run of doing something like that is like, ugh.
And
like
some people must
not appealing
enjoy it
at all. Not appealing.
Some people must enjoy it, because I always remember when I saw Philip Seymour Hoffman, Death of a Salesman, and which was I think the last kind of thing he did before he died. And he walks on stage, and his opening line is like, I have such thoughts, or I have such dark thoughts or bad thoughts.
Yeah.
That's the first line of like the play, him coming home. And I think plenty of people in the past just walked in and was like, I have such dark thoughts. He comes in, beginning of the play, big applause. He's a superstar. And then he goes, I have such dark thoughts. And he starts sobbing. And I just thought, man, oh man, every 2 times a day sometimes. You just have to show up, say hi to everyone, say hi to Andrew Garfield, and then like just walk on with that. And there was part of me that I tried so hard to like be that actor for a while. I really wanted to be that. I wanted to cry, and then I look back at it now, I'm like, that's just not what I am, man.
No.
And I don't want to be.
No.
Yeah.
Well, there's like, it's hard to not feel like there's a masturbatory thing to it, because you're like, there is this thing where you're like, also you're like, no offense against Arthur Miller, like it's, but you're also like, why are we doing that, like that thing over and over again, and being like 70 years later, we're still like at that point where we're like, the American dream, we are depressed. Like you're like, I agree.
Also,
there's things that are universal, but there's also like some of these stories you're like, I feel like, why put people in this?
Who was the famous actor from this she basically said she had to play Ophelia, and she would only do it 4 times a week, and said I can only bear my soul this many times a week or whatever.
Oh, I don't
There's just something where especially with theater, there's actors have somehow, every time actors get abused, somehow we like contextualize it in like, this is what it means to be an actor. So there very much is this mentality of like, acting is about doing it 8 times a week. And it's like, no, that's the economic model in this capitalist system.
Yeah.
And maybe that is insane to do something this heavy on 2 show days on a Saturday.
Yeah.
So this maybe the circumstances that came about solely because of money aren't artistically ideal.
Yeah.
And so there is,
and the only people that can like say that they aren't going to do that are like when Oprah was going to do Broadway, and then she was like, "No, you know what? I'm not going to do Night Mother 8 times a week." Because that was like she was supposed to do that show where it's
Night
just
Mother is there. It's the daughter's going to kill herself, and the mom's like trying to
convince her not
out of it.
to.
And at the end, she does.
She
it.
kills herself.
She kills
so
herself.
Oprah, it was like this big
and
thing.
the audience wants to, frankly, too.
Yeah,
It's a depressing.
It was
play.
a big thing. Oprah was going to do it, and then she was like, "No, actually, I'm not going to do that." And they just didn't do it because it was like either Oprah or nothing. Wow. And you're like, why? I don't want to put myself in that thing, like in that, like. And you're like, yeah, that makes sense to not want to put yourself in that. That 8 times a week.
Sometimes it's amazing some of these actors that come back to Broadway, not because they wouldn't enjoy live theater, but the schedule is just, when Daniel Craig comes back and does Shakespeare, you're like, oh, you guys really like this. Or why don't you do a 4-show day? If I was the same as Daniel Craig, you'd never see me do a matinee in my entire life. Fuck matinee. Doing my play, we had to do matinees, and it was a lot of comedy. And man, those matinees, I felt so awful.
Yeah.
Doing that play really solidified. I was like, I don't want to do theater for that reason of doing the same thing every time. I was going nuts.
Yeah.
Would you advise against going to a matinee show just solely for that reason, like that the actors are probably not as into it?
I mean,
I know that I never have as much. There is like a psychological thing about matinees where I'm like, like a little bit on some level.
It's always weird because Broadway shows, I think in general, they close. Their last shows usually are a matinee. That's like the end of the cycle.
Oh, yeah.
So I've seen the like final performance of a lot of shows at a matinee.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I mean, I still think like these things become such machines. It can be strong, but for sure, I wouldn't want to go to matinee just because psychologically I'm not there at 3 p.m.
But you could get a good deal on it.
Well, that's the only reason.
True.
That's the only reason you should do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to find out, what are your guys' comedic, like, where'd you get your sense of humor from? Like, what was your first like impression of comedy, or like what was like the first thing that you saw or like heard that you were like, that's funny, and like that stuck with you?
Yeah, I mean, the earliest influences I think of, like Wayside School, were these like comedy books about a school. Did you ever heard about Wayside School? But like in terms of like comedians, like Seinfeld, my dad and I watched Seinfeld like super early, and I just feel like that is in my DNA. I think there's like, you know, we've talked on this podcast, and I talk with other Jews who like were raised Jewish, and there's like a thing of that I have traits that are traditionally Jewish, or, you know, on stage I could be like, I'm Jewish, and if I've done enough time, people laugh at that because they're like, yeah, we know. And there's a lot of times I think like, I don't know if that's from my mom. I honestly think part of it is like growing up with Seinfeld, which was like a super Jewish show, and that being like my core entertainment. So I was always just a Seinfeld guy. I mean, you know, I grew up like every kid my age on Nickelodeon shows and Doug, and that's all comedy. I mean, the Rugrats, that's all comedy. So I kind of had that. But I think Seinfeld, in terms of like what made it unique, was kind of how early I was watching Seinfeld. Right. And then South Park. In South Park, my dad let me watch that very early. I was never a Simpsons guy. Never have been. Never seemed to have been able to get into it. Yeah. But Seinfeld and South Park for sure.
How old were you when you were watching South Park?
And I was watching it from the beginning. I don't know when South Park started, but like
it's been around, 20 some odd, like.
Yeah. I remember my stepmom at the time, my sister's mom, there was like this tape. The origin of South Park was really interesting, but there was some tape of Jesus fighting Santa, and the devil was the referee. And like it was like a VHS that like went viral in the sense of people made copies of it. And I remember my stepmom like showing, and it's funny because she's like very religious now, or was, but at the time she thought it was really funny. And I just had the kind of dad who was like totally fine with that stuff.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Did you so no like shows were off limits when you were a kid?
No, my dad let me watch like Species, which was a very fucked up movie. So he let me watch anything He didn't care about nudity. He didn't care about cursing. If anything, violence would have been more of his thing, but he didn't seem to mind at all. One time, I had a sleepover and we were young, and I mean, I feel like first grade or second grade, and my dad thought we had bought Little Frankenstein. That's the Mel Brooks movie, right?
Young Frankenstein.
Young Frankenstein. But this was Little Frankenstein. Oh. And it's some like black and white movie where I think it's actually scary, but there were tits in it. And my dad had to apologize to all the parents.
Oh my God.
Because we just went downstairs and we were watching this very not funny movie that my dad was like, this is the funniest movie in the world.
Oh my God.
And I never was a Mel Brooks guy either. I've never been a Mel Brooks guy.
No, me either, really.
And,
I'd like to like him, but I don't dislike. I just it didn't connect to me. That wasn't my. I was big. I Comedy Central, like early Comedy Central, was very like my jam. Like I would be like, I was watching. I think the first real thing that obviously it was Chris Farley. I was like obsessed with Chris Farley as a kid, like from a very young age. Like when I was probably 6 or 7, and like really like that. Old reruns of Kids in the Hall were really big, and then when I was in middle school, I got really into like Strangers with Candy was a big, like, felt like no one at school was watching it, and I was like I was very obsessed with Strangers with Candy. And then also, like, I think any other thing when I was really young is I would watch reruns of The Golden Girls with my grandma.
Oh.
And I was very into The Golden Girls. So I feel like
I think that's like a unique, like, part of your unique, like, everyone who I think is comedically interesting, like, they have like some unique thing to them, and I feel like that's a strange. Yeah. Not everyone has that at that age.
Yeah, I would watch reruns at her house, and I felt like I feel like it's one of those things where like it's sometimes you look back at the stuff you watched and you're like, and I'm like, oh, like it was good and informative, like it's good. The joke writing holds up on the.
Were you sad about Betty White? Did you feel like a
I mean, sad in the way, like, you know, but you're like, she's 99, you know, like, so all the rest are dead. So it was just, you know, not like a David Bowie died, you know, in that way.
It'd be fun if they did like a Golden Girls reunion show. It's just a bunch of urns on a table.
Oh no. Just like a sad piano music version.
We're just like, we're in this phase where these companies have so much money that they just had a Harry Potter reunion. Yeah. And it just like we have reached peak like recycling. Like, let's not even make a new movie about the IP. Let's just get them in a room and be like, what was it like?
Let's just talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I also wanted to know, how did you guys meet?
So we've talked about that Bachelorette show here and there, but it was Russell, you were in the show first, so there was a show.
Gianmarco was a replacement.
I was a replacement. So there was a show I auditioned for on Actors Access, which is like the thing that anyone can access. Yeah. And there was a producer who had a show called Awesome 80s Prom, which had I always use the term viral, but like in the way a show succeeds.
It was on for 10 years. It was on for 10 years off Broadway.
And not only that, it was like this easily replicatable show that a bunch of people were doing in regional theaters, and so he was getting money from it. And it just had like every 80s stereotype character, which was one of those things where it was like, it was a racist time. So there was a character who was the Asian guy from one of the 80s movies.
Yeah.
And like, you know, it was racist then.
Yes.
And now in person, it's just bad.
For sure.
But it was fun. I mean, I thought it was a funny thing. If you've never been to theater before, it's a fun thing.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to create a different version of it. Of that.
Using the same template. Like it's at it's at like a Webster Hall type venue. It's so
still
interactive.
racist, but like interactive. And it was a parody of the Bachelorette. And so it's like one woman and a bunch of people vying for her attention, and there's kind of scenes that, like, you know, you amidst your drinks and talking, there's kind of a scene, and then it breaks into just interacting and people walking around and shooting the shit. So you were first.
So they picked the cast after a few rounds of auditions, and it was basically like we were gonna spend like, I think 4 months. I think it was like January. No, we started before the new year. I think it was like It was a weird amount of time, and then it was going to open at the end of March. And so it was
What
like
year was this?
2015. Yeah.
One day a week you'd meet.
One day a week you'd meet. You'd do
Monday
like a
nights.
3-hour like improv like workshop thing. We'd kind of create our own characters and stuff. So we started meeting. We had 1 or 2 of those with a guy who was going to be playing. Gianmarco ended up playing, and this guy. He came and he was I think he was a stand-up too. I have no idea who he is now, but he was funny, and then he quit. I feel like it was like one of the vibe of him was like, I don't need this, and like so he quit.
It was like there's a very interesting subsect of theater. Like I only dabbled in. So like really, there's a bottom level of theater. There's like so low where there was a show I did at the Davenport Theater before this where, there's bringer shows for comedy where you bring audience members and that's how you get stage time. They were like bringer plays almost where it was like kind of sketches, but it was meant to be like a theater piece. Yeah. But you were like kind of heavily encouraged to bring audience members. People. And it was like $25 and you get a thimble of whiskey along with it. Like really dirty, low theater. And when you start in New York, you're man, and the beginning is the worst. Yeah. And this was like a slight level above that, where we had these contracts. I remember I had a manager and at the time, a different manager that I have now, and I showed them the contract. And like part of the interesting thing about the contract was like you'd get 1% of the proceeds. So in your mind, you're like 1% is nothing. But if it's like Awesome 80s Prom, it's going to be all over the country and the world, and you'll have this passive income for the rest of your life. Meanwhile, my manager said, no, your cast will each be splitting 1% of this show. So like, if it started making more money than Apple, you'd get $100. Yeah. But I remember my manager very distinctly, she was like, I should throw this contract out the window. And I was like, but I want to do it. It was only Saturday nights. So basically we did all this improv. It was
it was like a 70-minute show. It was like very quick.
Yeah. So we did all this improv, and I was still like new to comedy. I would do stand-up show 2 times a year. But like, it felt like a bunch of the actors there I would call them comedians. I know it has this stand-up connotation, but like you, Douglas Goodhart, who's in Uncle Function, Alex Fast, who's in Uncle Function, Douglas Goodhart's girlfriend was in it. And they were all really funny. Yeah. They were really funny and really good at improv. And we were doing like character improv. Yeah. And
it was one of those things where it became very clear, because we were doing it, became very clear where you were like, in the first month or 2, where you're like, oh, like this person. I remember being like, after the first rehearsal, you weren't there yet, but I remember thinking that Douglas and Alex were like 2 of the funniest people that I'd ever been around, and having like a comedy crush on like they made me laugh so hard. And then so I felt like early on in that thing, we found the people that we thought were really funny, and we were like kind of
and we were all people like we should have gone to UCB way back in the day, but this was our version of it. Yes. And I remember being dreadfully insecure. Yeah, me too. Because I thought like I was like a funny person, and then particularly Alex Fast, who doesn't he works.
He formed Uncle Function, but then he left,
and he was so fucking talented and so quick on his feet. Yeah. And I just remember,
and makes you nervous. Like he would make you would be like he was a real live wire. Like we were like, what is he gonna,
Yeah, and we didn't have interpersonal chemistry. now we saw each other at our friend Chris's birthday, and now we talked a long time. So yeah, but like at that phase, when people were like more talented than me, I just became the worst version of like what I am. And I would walk away from those rehearsals so insecure and feeling like a loser. And then Alex ended up asking me to be on the sketch team that was being formed. The producer, who kind of like is operating at 1,000 different, so he's got this show, he's got Broadway shows, and he also was like, I'm going to have a sketch team. And I don't know where the market was for that. Like
Yeah.
maybe 10 years before that.
I think he wanted to make Davenport Theater more of like a comedy hub. So he's like, I'll have a sketch team. But then it resulted
Probably
in us
didn't do
doing
anything with
we
it.
resulted in us doing one show there that
We did a couple shows at the Davenport
yeah,
Theater.
oh yeah. But one was like very like you have space to rehearse here, you have blah
Yeah.
blah. It was like oh great, we have a space to rehearse and a thing, and it was a nice intro thing that yeah.
And I think what's incredible about it was just like so then Alex brought in Chris Cafaro, who's on Uncle Function now, and then Jessica Fry.
He went to college with Jessica, and Chris had done Awesome 80s Prom with him.
And so it was just like it worked somehow. I mean, I've been on several improv teams, comedy collaborations, and like this just happened to work. And the first couple of years I found very challenging because I felt when I first went in there, I thought, obviously I thought like, oh, I know comedy really well because I had considered myself a stand-up comedian. Obviously looking back, it's like, no, I wasn't. But I remember being very overwhelmed by how talented the rest were. And like, this is like part of like getting out of college or just entering the real world, especially in New York. You're like, fuck, everyone is really good. And I remember those like first couple years, specifically Russell and listen, Douglas and Chris are very funny too, but like Russell would have sketches where he would just make us all laugh so fucking hard.
To this day.
But there was like something in the beginning. It was just like, I just saw it and all I could think was, I am not good enough to be here.
Wow.
And there was a couple.
There were a couple times where I thought you were going to quit because you were really like, and it wasn't because it was like we were fighting. It was just because you felt overwhelmed. Like it felt like you.
Well, we had a director for the first show we did, and I remember he was like picking, like he was in charge, and he was picking which sketches for us to do. And I had 3 sketches in contention. One of them being a casting session for an ISIS beheading video that M. Night Shyamalan was directing. And there were still some good jokes in there. I stand by it. But I remember he only picked one of my 3, and everyone else got 2 sketches in the show. And that was my first like, oh my God, I'm not good. And that was awful. And that was part of like the structure of it. Like it did kind of suck in terms of that, where we were all together and then some outside force picks these things.
Yes. Yeah.
But I remember there's one Uncle Function, and it was like 2 years in, where it was at Shetler Studios.
Oh, I remember that.
And afterwards, day. like it was a sketch that never even worked, but it was one where Jessica was the date that was super weird. What's the line about Florida?
Yeah. It was something about like it was someone has a new girlfriend. Someone had just died, and you're like, I forget
something about. He was like, don't talk about him that way. He just died. He was killed by the state for being a murderer.
Yeah.
But it was like Jessica was like crushing. It was just one of these moments where everyone was laughing.
Yeah.
And I was laughing too.
Yeah.
But inside I was like, I was obviously sad about many things, and I like full on started like, I left after, and Chris is the one whenever I'm that emotional or like crying. Chris is the like Gianmarco whisperer.
Yeah.
Unless we're
so
fighting,
sweet.
and then it's chaos. Then we just have to.
No,
part.
I remember he talked to you because we were like, someone got to talk to him because you were, you felt like you were so like, I don't know, you were so wound up. I remember too, like, I don't know if that was the same time where there was a big fight where we were gonna like do like an improv warm up game, and you were like so against doing this improv warm up game, and you were like dead set and like we don't you were like I don't know why we're doing this.
I don't
and
remember
you were like
this at
you were
all.
like so angry about the thing. We were like, well, let's just like warm up. We just got here, and we'd never do that anymore. So it just is a funny thing. Like you were very like in like. I was just like, it's a lot different now.
Yeah,
everyone figured out everyone's things, and like, I think we feel a lot more secure and insecure in different ways. But
yeah, now I'm totally got it together. I never feel insecure anymore. But yeah, I think it was just like, it's all being an actor in the city. It's just brutal. And I don't mean like, oh, it's harder than other jobs. It's more just like you're dependent on a bunch of sources for like validation and knowing if you're good or making the right decisions. So you just live in a real bubble of insecurity and it was just a challenging time. But like Uncle Funk just meant it was like me finding friends.
Yeah,
for the first time. It was a lot of things.
It was
to
definitely like you.
I wasn't socialized
figuring out
fully.
what it meant to have friends.
Yeah,
Because
I had
it
a
was
girlfriend in college that was my whole social life. I was in an acting company. The acting company, they were my friends. It disappeared. And then I started in New York. I have no friends in New York. I just went through a breakup. I don't know how to have friends.
Well,
and so like Uncle Function was like truly a like learning how to be a social being in the world.
I felt
mixed with talent.
I felt like I was really good at socializing, but I, like you, didn't have friends in New York until Uncle Function. Like I had the people I lived with that I was close with, a couple of people I saw from time to time, but I didn't have a group of like, these are like my best friends in the city. And I felt like that didn't happen until Uncle Function like gave me that too. Cause I was like, I kept feeling like I've been here for, at that point, I'd been there like 3-4 years. And I was like, how do I not have more friends? Like, I feel like I am someone who have a really easy time talking, but I wasn't going to class. I didn't take classes at UCB or anything. So I just wasn't meeting people in that way. So,
yeah. So it was like, it was a blessing and it was challenging. And then like it hit its stride at some point. But in the beginning, I really was just overwhelmed with like, I didn't know how to, I didn't feel like I had anything I was bringing to the table yet. And I didn't know what I was good at. And so I just felt like everyone thinks that I'm the worst one here. Everyone knows it. And it it was really bad for a couple of years, that feeling.
mm-hmm.
But here you are, 10 years later.
Yeah, I mean, no,
10, 7, yeah.
Then once you've seen Russell's tricks, you're like, oh, so he's loud and then makes it a little gay, and
everyone has their tricks.
Everyone has their tricks, and there is, and I don't mean this to disparage anyone on the team, but it's like once you've worked with someone a long enough time, you've seen them suck. You've seen them be great. You've seen them suck. You've seen everything in between. You've seen the tricks that they lean on. You see the things that are new. And every performer becomes human to you.
Right.
And I don't think that means you think of them as less talented, but you just like, we've all seen each other write sketches that were brilliant.
Yes.
And write sketches that it was like, how could you have thought to like have us read this together? Like,
Yeah.
Do you know life is finite?
Yeah.
And you're going to bring this piece about a psychic bringing back my dead Italian.
Hey.
I'm just kidding. That was a sketch from today's rehearsal that I really like. But yeah, it took a while, and it really, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was a lot. Uncle Funk does a lot of things to
It
me.
is funny when you do it that long too, and you're like, it's so funny that you're like, you still do this thing right before you. That is the worst part of the sketch is like when you have a new thing, and for whatever reason you're like, I can't imagine the pressure if you were like, if it was like an SNL type scenario, because I'm like, I feel so vulnerable in terms of just doing it with a group of people that I consider my best friends. Like, and it's like, like, no matter how long it's been, you do that dumb bullshit thing where you're like, and
so
it's
we're
not done
talking-
yet. It's kind of like, I got to figure it out. It's a mess right now. You do like that whole like
Right,
spiel of like how this is not good. It's bad. It's blah, 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 blah.
And it's very, I mean, that's how I've always operated stand-up wise. I feel like because I started as an actor, and we all were actors before comedians, that we very much like, it's like, let's test it out in front of each other. Let's do a reading. I think we all are very influenced by this like playwriting. You do a reading, you see how it plays, and then you make notes. And so Uncle Function taught me in a way how I do stand-up now, which is, it's part of it is just learning how to incorporate feedback and make changes based on that feedback.
Yeah.
And like we make changes. Our audience is each other for those first reads of those sketches.
Yeah.
And like and then with stand up, that's like, now I do that, with different people at different times, but it came from Uncle Function, learning that skill.
Yeah.
Wow. Forged in the fires.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. The fires of sketch comedy.
Do you think sketch comedy is like a dying art now?
It exists in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Commercials are sketches, but yeah, I think that like the powers, seeing how stand-up barely functions, right? And like you can get to this higher level where it makes enough money touring on the road. But I think like touring is a big part of what makes an art form like viable. And like I think about, I was just in North Carolina doing the smaller room at a reputable chain, and I do one show Friday, one show Saturday. My payday for those 2 shows combined was $500. The travel is probably $2 something on top of that. You know as well as I do, we paid $250 for the ads for that. I sell merch to make up a little, but I barely make any money. So make that a sketch team of 4 or 5 people, there's no money to be had. So there's not a healthy system for a sketch as a live art form to really thrive.
Yeah.
And it's too bad. And you always think that there could be an entrepreneur somewhere who could figure this out, but it's about like a whole. So UCB created hubs essentially, and they ultimately failed. They didn't pay anyone. And part of their ability to draw was the belief that if you went there, it was your introduction to the professional pipeline.
Yeah.
And it worked for a long time. And casting directors would say, you got to have UCB experience to audition for this commercial, which is an insane requirement. It's elitist. It encourages people who only have money. It's a horrible system because you're basically banking on this institution to do your work for you.
Yeah.
But it allowed UCB to create a stage that people went to and people honing their craft. So right now, I think a sketch without these theaters is in a bit of a strange place. And there was a time where character people were stand-up comedians. Jim Carrey would not have, I don't think he would have done stand-up in this day and age. He would have done like character work and characters welcome. So I don't think it's like a dying form because I think all these art forms exist because they're there. They're a way to express yourself comedically. But I don't think there's any kind of place for it to really thrive right now other than
TV,
TikTok, and social media, which some brilliance is on there. I mean, Caleb Huron, people make brilliant things on there, but live sketch comedy, there's just not a lot. And I don't know what will happen. Yeah. I do think something will happen, but I think there might be a limit because I just don't think the arts are fostered enough economically to create a system where people could tour. Uncle Function could never tour the way that I tour as a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
And that's too bad. That's too bad because I think there's a lot of great stuff that could be out there.
Yeah.
And Uncle Function should be way more famous than it is.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's. I want to hear more about the Unemployed Actors Studio. I saw a couple of videos on YouTube, and one of those was actually. Wait, is there a distinction between an actor unprepared and like the whole matzo pizza thing?
Yeah, so these are just 2 early projects. An Actor Unprepared was like my first web series right out the gate, where a production company like offered to like make these series with me, and it was a great experience. I felt like if you watch it, I think you see Seinfeld right then and there.
Yeah.
And I think I was proud of it. I still look back and I'm like, some of these moments are fun, but it was a time where everyone was making web series. Web series was the thing. This was like when Broad City like got the Comedy Central deal, and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you feel like, unfortunately, you feel like, oh, fucking, I'm late to this party. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of like, struggling as an actor, you feel like, fuck, I guess I didn't read the tea leaves, or you just didn't. Yeah. So I remember trying to get press for An Actor Unprepared, which was a web series, 5 episodes, fully scripted, 10 minutes each, 7 to 10. And I remember trying to get press for it, and I wrote Backstage Magazine, which featured web series a bunch. And they're like, oh, cool, we'll check it out. By the way, and this was like one of their interns, by the way, if you have any time, I also wrote a web series about being an actor. If you want to watch that on YouTube, here it is. And I thought that was a real like, oh, fuck. And I would write that series now. I mean, there's great series about the arts. I remember Hello Ladies, which didn't get a lot of love, but Stephen Merchant on HBO was a very good show. I never saw it. And his friend is an actor, and you can't help it. You write about the things you know. So there's a lot of great series out there about being an actor, but there only gets to be a couple at a time. And at a certain point, it's like, you know, I would love to write my Crashing. Of course. Right. But we just had a Crashing. And if we're going to have another stand-up show, it's not going to be a straight white guy. I mean, and it could be, obviously, and it probably will be in a couple years. But there's a degree of like, how many of these shows can we have in the zeitgeist?
And not feel like we've kind of,
we've seen it.
This.
And And then Matzo Pizza was just like a different project later where I got these General Electric commercials. I had the most money I've had. I mean, I haven't had that much money since. And I met Lindsay Elizabeth Hand, who's a producer, Edge in Motion Productions. And I spent an insane amount of money just making these sketches. And like, it was good. I learned a lot. And if like I ever have a show again, like I learned lessons about like leadership and decisions and so many things, so many tools, especially like it didn't do well. I mean, some things got a lot of views, but it didn't like, wasn't picked up for a series or anything or get me a new agent or anything. But like I learned a lot of lessons from that I think I use when I promote myself as a stand-up comedian now. And it was all very, very useful stuff.
So my favorite Matzo Pizza video was That's a Spicy Pepper Show.
Oh God.
So
Ghost pepper.
Russell's nervous about this one because we can give a context here where your character is like, we're these YouTube dumbasses.
Yes.
And so there's a joke where you say shishito pepper.
Yes.
And you say it like with an accent.
Yeah, I don't know why we have to highlight it on this.
But I wrote it because I wrote it, and he's just an actor. There's movies. Look at the pizza. What did you see? Licorice Pizza?
I did not.
No,
There is
I
a
know.
racist moment in Licorice Pizza that is insane.
Yeah.
But it's the character. But and then in the sketch I go, we're not allowed to do that anymore, and we cut and we fix it.
And I say sorry, but there is a thing where. Do you remember that day? Like my train stopped coming.
Yeah,
I was like an hour and a half late to that shooting day.
And and Russell has never been late since to a single thing ever.
That late?
No,
that
it was Russell.
wild.
Russell was like crazy late, and Lindsay had not worked with you yet, and I had to be like, I promise, this is
This
train
is insane.
issue.
Like it was an insane thing. Like it was like. But anyways,
It's a funny. It was the one sketch I wrote that like
there
several.
was a sequel. Do you remember this?
There's a sequel.
Yeah, so remember, you entered that into some contest.
You're right.
So
wait, let's just explain
yeah.
real quick. So the sketch, it was like, this was before Hot Ones was a big thing, but people were making like eat a spicy thing, and ours was like, we did it, but Russell's character did not eat the spicy pepper, and I was like dying from the pepper, and he turned it into, he was mad at me about something and would only give me milk if I would admit that the finale of Lost was actually good.
Yeah.
And this is why the sketch series didn't succeed, is that it truly was random.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was very funny, and it was very true to me. And like, maybe if you're Tim Robbins and Netflix is promoting it, like people go like, the
it was
people who are
very
into it will like
that
it.
kind of.
But it was weird.
It was weird.
It was very me. It was my truth.
And it
comedically.
it ended up being like this whole big thing, and then it ended up the end was like a little bit like Lost.
You give me a gun, and I decide to kill myself as opposed to admit that Lost finale was good.
Also, sidebar: Gianmarco was eating spicy pepper. You were the actor of like the what do you call it? Kind of method actor. You were crying because you were eating spicy peppers.
I didn't eat a ghost pepper, so I wasn't quite like Jeremy Strong would have eaten the ghost pepper.
Yes.
But I wanted to like really be real. And so I was eating some kind of pepper that was very spicy. And I just kept eating them until I was like crying and like it hurt.
Yeah.
And that night I took an improv class. I remember I had to shit in the middle of that improv class, like the worst pain of my entire life.
And because when we were filming, we had to actually have you turn on the sink and not work. They had turned off the water, so there was not water. You were like in between. You were like But anyways, yes. So you end up dead at the end of the thing, and it's like me rolling over, being like, oh, he is actually dead. So then you entered this into some UCB thing. I forget.
Yeah, it was
Channel
Dan
101.
Harmon's Channel
Yeah.
1. Dan Harmon had like a video sketch series thing at UCB.
And it won. So then it was like, okay, we had to, then you were like, we talked and you're like, we have to have a second episode of this series, but he had died. So then it was like, I filmed a thing on my own.
Yeah.
It was called My High Kitchen. And it was like that same premise, but it was like very low budget. And it was me trying heroin for the first time while
my drunk kitchen was a popular show where this girl would that like blew up, where she would get a little bit drunk and then cook and like jokey. And so that was the idea, that it's, again, we take these, and you doing heroin. And did you die in it too?
I died, yes. So like the very beginning was like the intro for, and it was like Calvin died. I have a show now. It was like just to address that you had died. It was like Calvin died. I have a show now, and it was called My High Kitchen, and it was like me trying heroin for the first time, and like, but like while I'm making a grilled cheese, so it'd be like the same kind of energy we had in the first one. But then it ended up with me just in the corner of the room, dead, while like my dog was licking my face at the time, and that was the end.
And then it won, and then you got a third level, and Lindsay, my friend, did an unboxing video of like your ashes or something, and cuts her hand and bleeds to death. And these are true to me. These are the kind of sketches I wanted to make at the time. I like had pivoted, and I wanted to be like Britannic, which was a big sketch group that was amazing, and this was like college humor. And again, it was like. I caught it on the tail end.
It was all I've
late.
always been too late to the thing too.
And also just like that was a reality check of where like I hadn't done the UCB and all the things. So I didn't know these people that, it's all part of this network. And some of them started at NYU, and then some of them really got in touch at UCB. And it was one of those things where like you can't make this stuff happen on your own unless you're so social media savvy, you're a genius. But it was just like, when I first moved to New York, I was like, I'm going to meet casting directors, get into TV shows that way. And I did that and eschewed working in acting classes and comedy classes. So I didn't have a network. I didn't have a community. So there was nothing to like help prop me up. And that was a hard lesson to learn until you're like 25, 26. And then being like, okay, I got to like engage in the community. Yeah. And things they don't teach you in school.
No.
What other learning curves have you experienced while like living in New York City? Because I just moved here like 8 months ago, so I'm still like going through all that.
And it really is about like, it's the social aspect, I think, which has always been a struggle for me. But like, that's what sucked, is that I was in this acting company, and then it disappeared and everything dissolved. And I was in like a musical theater conservatory, but by the time we graduated, there were only 11 people, and only 3 of them are still in the arts. Like,
wow.
Like some of those early things that would build my community just were too small or too fragile. And I think in New York, it's part of it is just like growing a base. And it takes time. It's something you cannot speed up. And you have to be wary of the things that waste your time. I was part of the Flea Theater, and like that was like exploitative, and they during the pandemic they got annihilated because they've got a $20 million theater and they never pay their actors. But you got to be careful. There's a lot of scams out there. Scams with like a lowercase s, where like they're not like robbing you, but they're not paying you, or they're not really helping you. And it's like just being able to find the people that you want to work with. Yeah.
I think that the social thing, and then also it took me a long time to figure out how to make money and feel like then I could have social, or I could do other things. Like I felt like it took me too long to be like, I was working 7 days a week. I had like 4 jobs, and it was all like, I was able to manage and like do it, but it was like so draining that you're like, I'm paying rent and like, but I have no time for like lots of things, so.
And then it's kind of like, why do you pay so much money to live here if you're just gonna like...
And then when I figured that out, like when I felt like I figured it out more, I was like, oh, it's much better to live this way. Like when you're like, okay, I can survive and I have time to, do other things.
I feel like one of the things that I think is the hardest, or I guess that I've had a struggle with here, is like navigating public transportation. I'm from Southern California, so like always had a car, and then obviously like drove around a lot. So then moving here, I don't have a car. I have to take the subway or the bus or walk or bike. 2 of those things that Gianmarco cannot do.
Yeah.
One of those things. But
I rarely use the bus too. I use it more like in the last 2 years, but rarely do I use the bus.
It feels like it takes a lot longer when you use it.
Doesn't feel as reliable. I can't tell you the number of times I thought a bus was coming to a stop and it skips the stop. If I could, I would chase after the driver.
And you're like running down the street like...
Screaming.
But so I have a story. One time I risked my life for this podcast.
Oh, really?
Oh my God.
I was going to meet with Spencer, our video editor, out in Bushwick. And
Spencer Cilio, also a very good stand-up comedian.
Out. And
he doesn't listen.
I know.
No way.
Maybe he will. And then I was taking the M train into Bushwick, and I've been to Bushwick like plenty of times before. I used to work with a photographer out there, and so, but usually I just take the M going into Manhattan, not further into Brooklyn. But this time took it further into Brooklyn, and I was unfamiliar with where I was going. So then I was like looking up at the signs, seeing like which stop I was at. I looked up, and then on my way back down, this guy sitting directly across from me, he's wearing a ski mask, and he like waves at me, and then I know the rule is to like not make eye contact with anyone on the train ever, and usually that's my go-to. I just stare at my phone the whole time. But then I was caught off guard. So then he like waves at me, and he like turns his phone screen around, and he shows me a photo of a gun.
This is so
and
scary.
I was terrified, and I was like texting my friends. I'm like, what do I do? Like,
were you the only one on the train with him?
no, there were like 10 other people in the same car. So
Oh my god!
You should have Googled a bigger gun and been like, don't fuck with me.
a bazooka.
I got a
Well, like-
bazooka on my phone.
but like I didn't know if he was like carrying a gun or
Yeah.
had some kind of weapon. So then I was texting my friend and was like, what do I do? And she's like, get off at the next stop. Like once you get off, try to find someone, like pretend you're friends with them. And I was like, okay, but the whole time I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm gonna die here.
And you approach someone else, they text their friend. This weird woman came up
Yeah,
to me,
yeah,
my
yeah.
friend. I think what's so funny about
Wait,
that.
but I want to. You got off. He didn't follow you? Or
I
did?
got off the train. Thankfully, he did not follow me. But I got out to like a city center square, whatever. There was a lot of people there, people selling stuff on the street. And so I felt like I was safe there because there were a bunch of people around. So then I turned around just to make sure that he wasn't following me. I did not see him. But then immediately, I call my friend, just tell her like, I'm okay, like crisis averted. And then immediately this non-Asian guy comes up to me and he says, ni hao. And I was like, okay.
Oh no!
And like was he being a jerk or was he
Oh
like
yeah, it was like from like a racist kind of thing. Like
no. Oh
you
my
shouldn't be
God.
here.
Oh
By the way, I'm Japanese, so that doesn't.
yeah.
yeah.
He should have said konnichiwa.
Exactly. I would have been like, all right.
Konnichiwa,
Yeah.
you say correct, sir. That is
Oh,
that
And
is wild.
Yeah, and then
Wait, where in New York was this?
off of the M, like maybe like Knickerbocker, like that stop or something. So
For a second I thought it was like, oh, now you're saying a slur.
hey, I didn't choose the name.
That is that's horrible, and I'm very sorry you had to go through that.
But then I texted you after about this, and then you're like, that happened to me at a McDonald's.
Right.
And then I was like, wait,
the guy
does
showed
this,
you a gun too?
does this just happen?
I think it was a
Like-
Starbucks, but it was some guy. We were sitting in the or the eating area, and he was like clearly like he was twitchy and like mentally something's going on, and like a lot of tics, and he kept going like, and he'd flashed his phone with a gun on it. He didn't have a ski mask on, but he just kept like showing this gun, and I went to.
Is that how they sell them?
But it was like, and it was just the way he was doing it, and he was showing it to the security camera. I remember this. He would like show it to he'd show it to me, show the security camera. And again, part of you is like, okay, well, I don't think like shooters are known for like showing it on their phone first in a Google Images.
Yeah.
But I went to the barista, this poor barista. He's just making 10 frappuccinos every 10 seconds. I'm like, hey, this guy, he's showing me a gun on his phone. And they were like, and like, get out. They don't have it. They don't have any fear in the world. This is the 10th
They're
time
like
it's
that
happened
phone
today.
gun Larry.
Phone gun Larry. But I remember when you told me that story, I was like, A, is it the same guy? That
Yeah.
seems very unlikely.
Yeah.
Or B, like maybe there's a mental illness, and then like the idea of like showing images, like the way he was showing it, imagine what I've never had a flasher, but I imagine it's whatever impulse it is, or like, let me show you the thing that's going to make you upset.
Yeah.
Like something about
Yeah.
that. Like gets them aroused.
Did I ever tell you one time I was on the subway and
You were flashing someone a picture of a gun on your phone. You had a ski mask on.
no, there was a guy that was like he looked, again, mentally unwell. But he was doing like fast drawings, like of people on the train.
Uh-huh.
And he was doing caricatures. They weren't flattering. Like I could see what he was drawing. And he was laughing. He was like doing it, and he'd be like looking at a lady
What kind of
drawing, and he'd be like and then he would get done with it really fast. He'd do it. It was actually impressive because you were like, these are like real drawings, and he would do it fast, and then he'd rip off the paper real quick and kind of like show it when he was done, but laughing the whole time. So he's doing it to a bunch of people.
Crazy
God,
caricaturist.
He's doing it
So
to a bunch of people,
scary.
and then he gets to me, and he was not laughing anymore. He was going, ew, 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 and then he ripped it off, and he goes, oh, and just like threw it. And so, but I was like, wait, why was my noise not the laugh?
What did it look like?
He was enjoying so much everyone else's thing. And then with me, he was like, ew, ew. Like, did not
What
like
did it look like?
What do you mean, what did it look like?
Did you look at it?
No, I didn't. I was doing that thing where you're like not looking, and but I was like clocking all of it. But I later on was so mad I didn't take it, like on the floor.
Oh my God,
Do you know
you
what I mean?
should've framed
and then
it.
framed it and like been like, because I was like, that
I want to
was-
know like what. That's so.
I mean,
funny.
I'm glad I didn't see what it looked like. I can't imagine it was flattering. Yeah, just like a giant circle with two little eyes.
Do you get a lot of people going ni hao as like a thing?
That's only the second time it's happened to me. It has also happened to me in Hollywood. So both not super great places, I guess. But no, I mean it's usually I don't.
Does it? Do you feel a rage, or do you like just go fuck it?
I think the first time it happened to me, I was like very like upset about it. I was like, "Fuck you!" Like,
Yeah.
get away from me.
Yeah.
But now I'm kind of just like, you're just a piece of shit.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah. But I hate that. That's what is hard about New York sometimes is you're like, you can be having a really bad day and something, and then you're like, it's so jarring how like, then you're like, come on. Like,
Yeah,
you're
exactly,
like,
yeah.
You know, like,
You'll hear on the episode that has the Casey Cohen episode, someone like kind of pushed themselves into Tova and like say someone like physically assaulted her on like the street, and I got in between them, and like no one was hurt, thank God. But it's just like one of those things in New York where you're like, the city's so tough sometimes, and then some fucker's gonna make your day worse.
Yeah.
And you're like, what are you doing, man?
yeah.
But I mean, you got to roll with the punches here, because otherwise, like, you
Sure.
can't live
Yeah.
here.
Sure.
No, yeah, for sure. I do find that noise canceling my headphones have helped a lot because I used to.
Oh my God, that'd be a great commercial of like, these headphones, you can't even hear the racist things people are saying to you.
No, but like there is a thing where you're like, I would get so anxious, like when someone is mentally unwell on the subway and feeling like you're trapped with that energy, I get so freaked out by it, and I feel like I give off the energy of like engage with me because I'm trying to hide so much, and I'm a big guy, so I'm still like that, and they pick up on that, and like sometimes they can, and so, but ever since then, like now I have music and stuff where I'm like, I miss a lot of things. And then you'll hear the tail end in between songs. You're like, oh, I missed this whole thing. This person screaming at someone else,
Yeah.
But that's scary because, like, what if like somebody's walking behind you and you don't even hear them?
Yeah. I think I think the privilege of being a big man like myself.
I agree.
I think people are less inclined to knock on wood.
Me too.
Hopefully I
Me
get
too.
killed.
I absolutely like. I have no idea. I think that most people do not fuck with me just because I'm tall, and if they knew how easily I would fold, they would come so hard. But I always remember one time in Harlem, there were a bunch of Rastafarian guys who'd hang out at my doorstep, and we'd always laugh, and we'd always have a moment going inside. And I remember once I had a woman over, and she was like, "Can you come downstairs and let me in?" And I was so confused. I was like, "Oh, I'll just buzz you in," but like she was like for her, she was like, "No, this is like scary for me. There are 8 men here.
Yeah.
There are 8 men here, and for all I know, they are rude to women and nice to me." And it was just one of those moments where I'm like, "Oh yeah, I don't really know what the world is like when you're like smaller."
Oh yeah, because like I would never have my noise canceling headphones on and like
No,
public
and you
transportation.
probably you shouldn't. Yeah.
I like if anything, I turn down the volume so I can still hear stuff.
I'm playing musical theater. I'm dancing through the
wish.
streets like,
Yeah.
do.
Oh, I never thought of that.
I really wish I
That's a
could.
bummer.
Yeah.
But that is not my reality. Okay, wait. So how long have you guys been living in New York City for?
Oh, definitely a decade now. I mean,
11 years for me.
Do you
graduated-
feel?
yeah.
Do you feel like you're a real New Yorker now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more about like experiences than it is about like time. but like I've dealt with the police. I've had a rat hit me in the leg. I mean, certainly by the time that I did a couple of those Black Lives Matter marches and the police like arrested everyone in front of me and like I ran with other people from the situation, you're like, oh yeah, this is my home.
Yeah.
This is my home. And it's really strange when you start that moment where going home to your parents is the trip. Like that's not visiting home. That's the trip.
Yeah.
And this is home.
Right.
But for sure.
Yeah.
For sure this is my home. And I don't have, you have a love for New York.
I do.
I have kind of a disdain, but I feel like that's also just in my nature.
Yeah.
Where I'm kind of, I feel angry at the city. I feel very angry about the subways. I feel it's sad about all the things that close and the chains, and
Yeah.
it just feels like the infrastructure is so crumbling. And
I feel all those things. I feel all those things too, but I just know when I go other places, I feel more disdain for
Sure.
other things, and feeling like, well, what can we do? You know, like that thing of like, and not to put down any other place, but I do feel like that oftentimes it's like I'm not even using all the resources of New York, but the possibility and the just knowing that it's there is comforting to me.
I was walking home. There was a 7-Eleven on Delancey, and I was going to get eggs. You know, I'm walking home late from the cellar. I don't have anything for breakfast, and all of a sudden you walk by it, and I thought I went crazy. It was entirely boarded up. There was no even sign it was a 7-Eleven. I don't know if they're remodeling or it went away, but sometimes moments like that happen where you're like, oh, it's gone?
It's gone?
I was in there yesterday,
7-Eleven,
and it
yeah.
was all, and you peek in, and like it's been gutted, and you're like,
Oh.
Oh my
when?
God.
It's truly, and I told Tova, and she was like, what do you mean it's not there anymore? And I was like, exactly what I mean. It's not there anymore.
That's so weird.
And it just feels like New York's in that state where I was just in Raleigh, North Carolina, and it's like the comedy club I performed at, they're moving and they're leaving this venue of 30 years because they're a booming economy, and Apple is moving their new headquarters there, so they're turning it into condos. And it's just like, sometimes you go everywhere in America and it feels like everyone's always like, oh, back in the 80s, back in the 90s, this was a thriving art scene.
It's everywhere in America. I feel like too, because you're like, it's just, I think it's America, because you're like, you should have seen this, blah, blah, blah. You missed the heyday. And you're like, every city, every town is saying that. And you're like, it's just America. We missed the heyday of America.
Missed heyday of America.
like it's all been not as good. And like, and I'm not talking about in terms of like, of there's a lot of things that are better.
I would call it like
Clearly.
late stage capitalism.
Yeah,
like
it's just like the stuff of like the, you know, but there's a thing too where I feel like for 40 years now, if you talk to, there's old New Yorkers who are like, yeah, you should have seen it in the 70s where blah, blah, you know, and there was like astounding levels of crime and things like that.
Yeah.
There is something where you're like, that New York's been gone for so long that you're like, it's been, you know, I don't know.
Yeah,
So-
Giuliani either cleaned up the city or got rid of all the arts and all the sex workers that my dad loved to visit. But like it sounded like back in the day, Times Square was like you could have the best
Hell's
time of your
Kitchen
life
was
or the
scary.
last moment
Yeah.
of your life.
Yeah.
You see those old subways. I mean, you're like, well, fuck. That looks scary.
I know.
That looks fucking scary.
That is the thing too, where I'm like, where people sometimes like New York, I'm like, I see those old videos of New York and I'm like, that does scare me.
Yeah.
But I never feel that way when I'm here now.
I will never forget. I don't know if I should. It's such a bad thing he said once, but I was in Harlem and on 125th and Malcolm X Boulevard, and my sister was going to NYU, and she's also white, friend of the family, and I invited her for dinner at like 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, and my stepfather called, and I guess she had told him that she was meeting me for dinner, and he said, "Don't you ever tell your sister to go to Harlem that late at night."
Oh my God.
And I was like, and then I thought about when they depicted Harlem in Mad Men, which is the 50s and 60s,
Yeah.
where they depicted it as like, just like a place a white person wouldn't go. And I was like, I live across the new Whole Foods here.
Yeah.
Right.
This
Do you know how
image of
expensive it
Harlem
is to live in Harlem?
is not what, like, and obviously there's problems racially too.
Yeah.
There's clearly, but maybe there was a time when that would have been strange to have a woman of her age, 17 years old, go up to Harlem. But it was such a moment of like, oh, you don't know what Harlem is like now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never could make a bit out of it, but it always struck me
Yeah.
as a very, very strange.
Russell, have you ever had like your I knew I was a New Yorker moment?
You know, no, I don't know if I have like that. I feel like going through the process of having to move a bunch, having a lot of jobs that are strange hours and things. I feel like it's just a collective thing. Of, you know, I've also had a rat walk across my foot once. There is a collective thing of like you've seen enough things where I always think of it like this. I think of it sometimes I go home or I'm with an extended family member or something, and they'll tell me something about their day. And I'm like, I would never think to share this detail or this story about someone. Or I'll notice that they're like, why is this person doing that? They'll be like in like our hometown area, or like they'll notice something about someone's lawn being weird or something where I'm like, what I feel like, what makes me feel like a New Yorker is I mind my own business. Yeah. Where I'm like, I would never think to care about what someone's wearing, what they're saying, what they're blah, blah, blah. You just go and do your thing. And it's like so boring sometimes what's being pointed out when I'm not in New York. So I'm like, there's times where what makes me laugh is like, there'll be full days where I'm like, oh, like one time I was like, oh, Nicole, I slipped in barf the other day and fell on the ground. Like I slipped, like where I'm like, didn't immediately come home and wasn't like, I just slipped in barf. It was like, yeah, I kept going. You know, you like there is a thing where I just like that New York minds its business most of the time, and I think that is what I felt more like like a New Yorker of like I really I like that because I get sometimes you go other places and there's so much comments on what other people are doing and I'm like, who cares? Like, just go, just keep doing
especially
what
in New York,
you're doing.
especially when you do feel it's when there's moments where it feels dangerous. Where you're like, I don't care what anyone else is doing. I just want to be safe.
Yeah,
and I just want to get from point A to point B.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, should we talk about your funeral?
Yeah, let's get to our funeral.
Oh, yeah.
So especially for our Patreon members, you've heard some funeral talk, but this is also now to the main feed. We do talk about our demise very often. I think Russ and I both are bound by very existential thoughts.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Death every day I think about it.
And the whole point of this is to get like a record of what you want to have prepared for your
this
funeral.
This is stressful. I guess I should have thought about this more.
I know the one thing with Russell is it's my job. What's really horrifying is that like I've like thought it through my head where like I go to the podium and I go, Russell just wanted to let you guys know one thing, and that he did not want to die. If he were here right now, he would be so upset.
And if
that he's dead.
And if there was a pill to live forever, he wouldn't worry about any of the consequences of that pill.
I have always believed that.
Take that right away.
There was always a thing when I was like so like existentially angsty in college where like some people like, but would you want to live forever? And I was like, yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Really? You get bored. No, I wouldn't. I would be so happy.
In theory, like you're not going to age like, cause sometimes I think the thing of not wanting to live forever is you're dealing with all the aging stuff and it beats you down so much that you're just like, and if you're not dealing with that aging process, I think I could go a lot longer than like 100 years.
Well, you get bored. Bitch, I've seen The Office
I
4
would kill
times
myself
through.
if I had to. Do you know what I mean? Like I would of course, like just because you can live forever doesn't mean you'd have to. I think the option is always on the table to not. If you take the pill and then you kill yourself if you ever change your mind.
No, I
think I could go for a long time probably.
Yeah, people who are like fine. I remember reading like it's a Greek philosopher. He says, I don't worry about death because when I'm dead, I am not. Like his comfort was like something about like, because why think about it? Because if I'm alive, then I'm not dead. And if I'm dead, then I am not. So no worries. Like it was like his Hakuna Matata with death. And I was always like, fuck off. Then kill yourself because it won't matter.
I always think of like when people die and I'm like, they didn't even get to hear that new album. Like I always think of the things that sometimes like, and it doesn't even make sense because I'm like, why would Betty White care about that album? But I do think of like this thing of like, I would be bummed if I didn't get to see that piece of content.
Sure.
So I think of all the content that I'll be sad about missing when I'm dead.
But what about like the bad things that they don't have to go through? Like the people who died before COVID never had to see like
Well, my grandfather, technically step grandfather, he died at the end of 2020, and it sucks that and he was like, I'm sure he wasn't fully aware in that last year, but it's just like to have to like have the tail end of your life and the final year be like this quarantine life and not see your
Yeah.
loved ones.
Yeah.
It really is
It's
so
very,
fucking
very
awful.
disheartening.
You know what? Something I've thought about so much since I ever saw it. I shouldn't even share it with you, but I will. Where it's like something about hospitals being overstaffed, and it was like something hospitals do where they fill up like a glove with warm water to let the dying person feel like they're
Gianmarco.
holding someone's hand.
Gianmarco, I hate that.
And I think about that. I think about
I
that
think
picture
about-
so
I
much.
think about how many percentage of people that were like, "This is a fake hand." Like they know it on some level. Like how even more depressing that is. That they're like,
See, that's where his mind goes.
they're like,
I
they're
felt like,
this
oh, they
isn't a
believe
real
it.
hand, and then they just die. You know, like how. Like when they realized that is they didn't even have a person to hold their hand, and that was the last thing they remember. So, but it's fine because it happens, and you know,
Somehow you made it sadder. Isn't that incredible? You took the sad thing and you made it even sadder. So for my funeral, oh man, it really sucks. I definitely want it to be like a funny thing,
it won't be.
but like I want there to be like funny like speeches.
So it's like a celebration of life as opposed to a
Who-
funeral.
who's gonna
you
speak?
know?
Chris would make something funny.
Chris would be
I mean,
good.
I
Chris
want you
would
to
be
make something
good.
funny, but like I know that's not like the way your comedy expresses itself,
Yeah.
and like you could do a character, like you have permission to if that's how you need to express
I don't
it.
think I want to do that, but I
Like oh my god, you could do the. All right, I'm requesting it now, so buckle up. This is not going to play well at the funeral. You have to do, your character, which is a former porn star turned
Gianmarco.
funeral home.
Gianmarco. I
Explain that
cannot
one.
do
Explain
that.
that one. So
It's just like
someone comes in, they need to cremate their aunt.
oh yeah, like so. She
And
was a porn star. She works at a funeral home, and she's like, "Yeah, you want to cremate that? It's so hot, yeah." And so she talks like that, but all of it's dealing with like funeral parlor.
Death and
Let it be on the
stupidity.
record. I want Russell to do that character at my
At your
funeral.
funeral. I haven't done that in a few
Oh my
years.
God.
It doesn't hold up as well. But yeah, sure, I'll revive it for your thing.
Mine, I will say this, and this is like, it's definitely would have to be more friends driven. Like, I just don't think my family. If I look again, there is this thought that some people really profess where they're like, well, it doesn't matter, you're dead, so it doesn't matter. We were talking about this with
Douglas.
We have a
yeah.
friend who's like, when they died, they
Wishes
had a
doesn't
list
matter.
saying, please don't. I don't want my brother at the funeral.
Yes.
And they didn't respect that list, and their thinking was like, well, shit, they're dead. And I guess this is the romantic side of me or the idealist side of me where I'm like, no, you should respect a dead person's
Yeah.
wishes if you can.
Yeah.
Which I guess is controversial in 2022.
No, because I agreed with you because I also feel like in that case you're like there's sometimes people can do their own sort of the work after the person is dead where they tell themselves like, oh, I know we weren't speaking for 20 years and we said we hated each other to everyone we know, but deep down I know, like, no, you didn't do the work in life. So that person went to the grave being like, I'm in a fight with them still.
Yeah.
And you don't get to absolve that as like the person that's still around.
Yeah.
I feel like on some level
I
because
for
it feels
sure,
like a little bit like you're just like, it's a cop out to be like, I know, like, and you're like, well, you can say that now. The other person can't. So it doesn't feel consensual
Yeah.
Right.
in that way.
I for sure would have a guest list for my funeral. Like, you're not invited.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would want it to be like, I definitely want people to, I had a comedian friend, Kenny Ortega, who died, and it was kind of strange because I knew him in this comedy sphere and only one comedian kind of spoke. And I think it was closer with his family. But for me, like, I would definitely want like, I would want it to have some humor to it. I think stand-up comedians, I've heard stories of comedians' funerals where people, their comedy friends who love them really try to send them off in a way where they create a little piece of art. It's a temporary piece of art that's very personal, and you put a lot of work into it. That feels cathartic, and that's what I want. I wouldn't want it to be overly somber or anything. Of course, I would hope people would be sad. I would hope some people would show up, but I would just if I were able to watch it, it's like I would want to see my close friends joking about me in a way that isn't too cruel. I feel like with some regular people funerals, non-comedian funerals, like they go like, we all know Stacy was a little bit picky, and everyone goes,
Yeah.
and I don't know, something about that
They're like,
I don't like because
you all know Stacy love the Red Sox, and you're like hearing people's identities ascribed to like 2 or 3 like things that feel so limiting and small, you know.
I think your camera died, Paige, but that's okay.
That's fine.
We'll on the screen.
I'm usually behind the camera anyways. So.
Sure. So yeah, I would want, I think there's a part of me like there's a part of me where I'm like, I want the art that I made expressed in some way. Like, and I don't know what that means, but there's something about like, I've dedicated most of the past 5 years of my life, like writing jokes. And I'm like, to have what feels like my life's work up to this point mentioned in some way, shape or form, or, Chris can perform some of my jokes. Yeah. Or just like something about the thing that I worked hard at, like talked in a way that felt good. I would find nice or sweet, because I think there's something whenever I'm like on a plane that's shaky, there's something of like, oh, I wish I had recorded a special, or I wish I had like completed a thing, because it just feels nice to think that your work culminated in something. So something, it's an artsy thing. Like when I think about my funeral, I think about like art and my close friends.
Me too.
And that's what I'd want.
Mine's expensive. So I think I want it at some venue where there's lots of screens and there could be, dancing, there's a bar, there's food. And I think of it more of like, there's almost like a cocktail hour, like where some of my favorite music is playing, maybe some of my favorite like TV things or like things I enjoyed like are playing on the thing. I don't know if I ever spoke. I did like, there was a phase at work at my old job where I would draw, and I have like all these like work art things that I really actually like. And so I've never used the art for anything. I've never shared it with anyone.
Yeah.
But so I would be like, why not just like then be like, oh, also Russell did these weird drawings that he never really talked about. Like something though, like a cocktail hour where you are hearing music that I loved and you are like seeing some of like artistic things. And then after the cocktail hour, I think a few people that I really love could do some speaking thing. And then just like a party, like a fun, like.
Would you want every member of Uncle Function to speak?
I would
out of Uncle Function. Who would you want to? If only one of us could speak, who would you want it to be?
I can't pick that. But I think I would be like whoever wants to speak can speak. I wouldn't feel good about assigning that to someone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would feel compelled to like.
But I would put a cap.
I would
put a cap on the time because I know
now you're going to create a fight.
Because I don't like. I think you get maybe 20 minutes of speeches max for the whole thing.
That's really not a lot.
I just feel
I'm doing 19
I'm
already.
just feeling like I've been at things where I'm like, it's going on too long now. Even if it's like the most beautiful thing in the world.
I would be fine like keeping it shorter if they had to do it.
Yeah.
But I think at this point I would insist on speaking.
Yeah, no, I would you would definitely speak. I think but so it's that, and then it's like a party afterwards, and then whenever like the next time a smaller group of people, because not everyone, that's going to be held in New York somewhere fun.
Yeah.
But then a smaller group of people could go with Nicole to Mardi Gras the following year, and there's a thing that happens.
Wow.
There's a thing that happens every year on Mardi Gras where people march. There's a crew that marches to the Mississippi River, and they throw in their loved one's ashes. And I don't think I want all my ashes to go in the Mississippi River, because I'm like, I'm not that connected to the Mississippi River. But I do think I like the idea of throwing a little bit in there. You know? So she can take part of me on the plane. And also it's funny to be like, so.
And then shower the rest on someone's tits. Yeah. Flashing it.
Yeah. But people can go, like smaller group of people can go and have a nice, fun, little Mardi Gras thing, and then just do that in the morning of Mardi Gras. Throw in the thing.
Yeah. I think sometimes like it's nothing you can guarantee in life, but there's just part of you that you're like, I think there's something about like once a year, think about me for a second. There's something about like taking just a moment to reflect, and sometimes life just does it for you.
Yeah.
But like even the Kenny Ortega who died, like we were work colleagues, and it's not like we were like close. We had never gone out for a meal solo, but we had done gigs together. And then it's just like once in a while, I just will think of that person, and you're like, oh, that's a funeral of its own, or that's a memorial. I am moved by people who, will create a shrine to a loved one, or like something small, or just like they'll take one time a year. I will always remember. There's a book called The Golden Compass. It's a famous book. Yeah. But there was something about these two, they were lovers, but they were in different universes, and they had to go back to their own universes and close up the door, so they would never see each other again. And once a year, they would go to this garden that existed in both of their universes, and they would like sit there having faith and knowing in that other universe that that person was there for that moment. So and and this is where like the very non-comedian, this is where like the still like very sappy part of me is. I like that. And there was just something beautiful about like that. Yeah. And I remember I was finishing that book. I was on the subway as I was getting to the end of that book, and I sat on the bench so I could finish it in one moment, and I was like crying on the bench reading that scene out in 125th by my Harlem
just like
apartment.
in Home Alone where the mom is in France looking at the moon. Kevin is in Chicago.
Yeah.
They're both looking at the moon.
I agree. You know? By the way, since you brought that up, we did have one patron. It did say they wanted to know about our music tastes as part of this interview. So I'll just say really quick, my music taste is garbage. It is like, I still like shitty late 90s, early 2000s pop. I love musical theater. I haven't listened to a lot of contemporary musical theater, but it's a mess. I have no system. I struggle like incorporating new music. I like some new pop. I like the Lady Gagas and I hate country. I like older rap like Eminem. Okay. And I listen to things that Russell likes, and I don't understand, and I feel like I'd have to be on drugs to get it. And I give it a sincere try. I don't go into it cynically like I do many other things. Yeah. I listen to all of RCACD sound system.
LCD sound system.
I listened to
it's not crazy.
And I was just like, I don't get it. And I'll try again, every couple of years. Yeah. And every year I'll go,
They're music guesting with John Mulaney.
I know.
Upcoming.
I know. I was guys. Yeah.
I would say like my top 5 would be in no order: Talking Heads, LCD Sound System, Arcade Fire, David Bowie. David Bowie's my like favorite. Yeah. But then I like older. I like the Cure, the Smiths, a bunch of new wave, that kind of stuff. But I like a lot of things. I like a dance. I like electronic, dancey, punky kind of mix of things. And then
Your go-to concert would be LCD2 sound system.
LCD sound system. I mean, I can't see some of the things, like I can't see a David Bowie concert, but LCD and Arcade Fire would probably be my 2 favorite like live acts in recent times. I always have a good time going to both of those concerts.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, and my like super like specific like Spice Girls, just a huge part of my life, just imprinted in my brain, where like I can listen to those songs and it brings me to a certain place. Yeah. My Chemical Romance, old Eminem for sure. And then just all the Sondheims, William Finn, Bill Finn is my favorite musical theater composer, has some great songs. Yeah. And I'm going to really try to get into LGBTQ sound system. We went from birth to funerals. Yep. Hopefully it's not too soon.
No. I'd like to live longer. So.
But let me tell you, if the funeral comes soon, that's definitely going to go back on the Patreon. And we're gonna record that, and it'll be some
Patreon
great
exclusive.
Patreon exclusive. We are not far from the day. I'm sure it's been done. Someone has turned the funeral into content.
Oh God,
that's how we live on forever now. Is just in content. So again, to all our patrons, I hope you don't get too sad about the Patreon. But it just means our regular episodes are going to get even better. We're going to build this up, and then we'll either go back, or you'll be so happy with the regular that we won't need to. Joe Rogan doesn't have a Patreon. No. And Russell was just telling us today that's his favorite place to get medical information. 100%.
Gianmarco. I've actually never even listened to Joe Rogan. other than the clips that get
So I
circulated?
posted this joke, and it was a true story. Like, I listen to Joe Rogan. He has stand-up comedians on, and he tells some funny comedy stories. And then also, I'd always heard that Jordan Peterson was like problematic, but I have no idea what his things were. So I listened to like 5 minutes of that episode. So like I always check out. I listen to everything, but it was very funny because Tova and I were talking about Joe Rogan, and we were like, get into sexy time, and she said, play Alexa, play the Joe Rogan Experience, and it said resuming the Joe Rogan Experience, and we laughed so hard. We laughed so fucking. She was like resuming the Joe Rogan Experience.
Alexa's like, you've heard every episode. Like,
well, that's the other thing where Alexa. Tova, no music taste at all. Doesn't even know if she likes music, but so, for sexy time, we will play like summer chill vibe or something. But one time I just said play music, and this is how I know Alexa's not listening to our conversations or our lovemaking. I said, Alexa, play music, and Alexa said, playing X-rated R&B jams.
how do you know she's not listening then?
Because there's
she
no
knew
way
you were gonna
that's
have
what
sex.
there's no way that's what she'd suggest based on our sexual activities. Like if anything,
she knew you were having
if our
sex.
playlist has a playlist, if our sex has a playlist, it's like Christmas classics,
Yeah.
or like Christian country, or Jewish, or it'd just be like playing. But for it to suggest X-rated
Because it knew
R&B
you were having
jams,
sex.
but like that's not. We're not having X-rated art. It should have been like family-friendly R&B jams. But producer Paige,
Thank you, Paige.
thank you so much for doing this.
Of course.
You probably, you're the second person other than me. I've listened to every episode. You've probably listened to close to every episode. Russell's listened to 3, and then after that,
But
there's a
he's
couple
here
people.
for them. He doesn't.
I'm here.
You've lived them. You don't need to listen
I
to
hear.
them.
Sometimes I drop in, I peek in, I like just enough to
Just to give me enough to give me a note about my interviewing skills.
or to give me why do you fucking do that in your life for myself?
Good.
Yeah,
Good,
yeah.
Because then I don't have to. But thank you to
Well,
our
wait,
listeners.
I have gifts.
Ah,
for you
yes.
guys. So the story behind this gift is that it was from like a segment on the podcast,
Oh,
and then I made it into a gift.
Oh
So-
my
Oh my
god!
God.
I'm gonna.
oh,
Wait, let me take this. Oh, great! You can hand it. We'll see it
Yeah.
on the camera.
oh my god!
All
It
right.
says the downside.
Downside with
Wait, but then turn it around at the same time.
Ready? This has got to stop. The 2022 tour. Nick's Comedy Stop. Philly Punchline. Laffy Dick's
Oh
Laugh Hut.
my
Waka
God.
Waka Chuckle Shack.
Wow.
Bob's Giggle Dungeon. Oh
You
my
did
god!
all
I
the
love
fake
this
comedy
so
club names.
much. Comedy
This
Killer
is-
Chuckle Festival presented by Funny Bones in the Closet.
That is so
Ha ha!
funny.
That's what laughter sounds like, Lodge.
Tiki
Oh, my-
Tina's Tickle Titties Tee Hee Hee Lounge.
Now, if you knew this was gonna happen, you would have put a little more thought into these titles.
I never imagined them on a shirt. Oh, thank you so
is
much.
I
Such-
thought that was like one of the most underrated bits from the show, and the first like Gianmarco sent me that clip just like on its own, and I was like crying, laughing,
Oh.
and I think that that's one of the hidden gems about the show.
One of the hidden gems, it'll come
I
back.
think you could always do it. I think you should always. I think it's especially if someone doesn't. I mean, like usually the guests have not heard the show. So
if we had gotten Casey Cohen, and I had done this list, there's no way she would have said like, "Are those real?" And we would have gotten to the end and just see if there was any even flinch in her face of like, "What?"
I know,
is
but I
going
think
on?
it's worth doing once in a while. It is.
I
funny.
do, and I think the
Yeah.
same list,
The same list.
the
for
same
everything?
list, and I
Okay.
think well, we can mix up a little, but
Yeah.
I will get better at. It is really hard.
you just
to
should rapid
say-
fire do it. You know.
Yeah. Waka Waka Chuckle Shack, Comedy Killer Chuckle Festival. Oh my God!
Thank you so much,
That's
Paige.
such a
course.
sweet gift. So thank you, everyone. Thank you
Thank
to Paige.
you.
Keep listening to Downside. Lots of good stuff. And now we have shirts, and maybe this is will be the merch idea
have
because it's
merch.
so
Yeah.
beautiful. I love it so much. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Downside.
1, 2, 3.